Good evening and welcome. I'm going to go ahead and get this workshop started. Today is April 2nd, 2025, and this is a workshop of the Scarborough Town Council. This evening, we have the chair of the school building committee with us this evening, Charlie Peters, as well as members of the school board. I will take a second to just go around and do introductions, and then I will turn it over to Charlie. So I am April Slyther. I'm the town council chair.
I'm Don Cushing, holding down the left one.
Ray Grogan, Assistant Superintendent.
Diane Netto, superintendent.
Larry Kane, Vice Chair for SBAC.
Charlie Peters, Chair of the SBAC.
Jillian Trapani, Half School Board.
John Kelleher, School Board.
Alyssa Peterson, School Board.
Rayla Tarpinian, School Board.
Bill Donovan, Town Council, and on the committee.
Corey Fellows, Town Council.
Tom Hall, Town Manager.
Excellent. Thank you. And again, welcome. Per our charter and charge. Oh, sorry, John, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. John Anderson. Hey, everybody. Sorry I couldn't be there.
Can't hear him.
Can't hear you.
Great, sounds great.
Can you hear me now?
It's actually a good test because I can't hear you.
Still can't hear?
Sorry.
John, do you want him to come off mute?
Does that work?
Come home. It's gonna be a real shame, John. Everyone knows I'm kidding. The public should know I'm kidding. All right, John's gonna try earbuds and
Can you hear me now?
Okay. He's gonna
Yeah.
log off and come back. Per the charge of the SBAC, we had built in some of these joint workshops in order to bring one another along. As the rep from the town council, along with Counselor Donovan, I can appreciate that the packet is dense and that the slides have a ton of information on them. And so we just had the foresight to plan some of these joint opportunities so that the building committee chair could come and present to bring not only the two bodies along, but also members of the public. And so with that, I will turn it over to you, Charlie.
Awesome. Thanks, April. So I'll just start by first, thank you to both bodies for having us. I think it's useful to hear your feedback as we continue down our work. And then also just to take a minute to acknowledge the members of the SBAC. There's over 20, volunteer members of the committee that have given quite a lot of time to get us to where we're at. Been a lot of debate, a lot of good compromises and healthy discussion to get us where we're at. And we're probably at the halfway point. So I know some of us are getting tired, but we're going to keep with it and get us to the finish line. So next slide, please. Just quickly, kind of what we'll go through. I'll show you kind of where we're at in the process, where we need to go. We'll talk about, obviously, the big news is we got down to two options, kind of how we got there. And then I'm going to go into a little bit of a granular discussion and description of what those options are, some of the middle school options that we're still looking at, and then what we're going to do next, and then open it up for discussion. Slide. So macro schedule, we are obviously here at our joint workshop. Like I said, about halfway through. We have a good schedule that takes us to the end of June, which is when we expect to have a recommendation to the school board, and then probably need to talk about what happens over the summer once we get through that, and how many members stay in the committee and stay active in what we do. So that's a discussion we'll need to have going forward. But we're right on track with kind of where the schedule had been. We've had a few, push a survey a week or things like that have delayed us, but for the most part, we're right where we should be. Next slide. So I wanted to just kind of put up where, what we voted on 2 weeks ago. Everybody knows we were at 5 options, and then we had 7 to vote against. And so we did add 2 options the week prior to the vote, but it's not like those just popped up, right? We had been studying these and looking at these for pretty much the month of March. ABA came from a committee member as we were analyzing our options. Everybody, I think, looked at A as the most cost-effective option, but also, had so many compromises that one of the committee members thought, hey, what if we did a hybrid kind of approach, and instead of building a 4th school, we rebuilt one of the 3rd schools. And so we looked at that based on the floor plans of option B and option A. Ultimately, the committee chose to consider option A as was their preferred choice to look at. And so we decided to include that as an official option for consideration. And then option Alt V3, we will come up with better names for these, but that's what they are now. And that's just through us iterating through these options and trying to get to the most complete and purposeful options we could. But that actually came from the survey. And so we got a lot of ideas that filtered through the survey in the open kind of comment section of that survey. We looked at probably a dozen of them. Harriman vetted them out. Some were not feasible at all. Some you would never get down to the price we needed to be at, or didn't meet enough of the benchmarking criteria for us to consider. But this one was really unique. And so we looked at this and it gained traction among the group for a number of reasons. And so they decided to include this one in our choices as well. So then the following week is when we had the vote. And if you'll go to the next slide, I just wanted to show you kind of what you guys have probably seen this slide. It was on social media and things like that. But this is essentially what we used to inform our decision. We did not have a, like a matrix kind of multivariable tool, but these informed all the committee members in how they voted and what we did. So we used the benchmarking metrics, community survey feedback, school board priorities, and then the budget of 70 to 130 million, making sure that we stayed true to that in our choice. Next slide. And so ultimately, the committee chose to put forth, we did end up selecting ABA and Alt V3, one of each kind of type of solution. So one is a smaller school, right? Maintains the neighborhood schools, and then one is a consolidated option. Next slide. So I'll get into kind of what are those. I want to be really clear as you look at ABA, when the committee selected this option, the caveat was we were not prepared yet to only consider closing Pleasant Hill. So the model that you see in front of you is modeled out as Pleasant Hill being the school, but we are going forward. We've asked Harriman to model out each of the 3 schools. We're going to consider those in our next meetings and decide which of the schools makes the most sense if this was the option that we move forward, which school would we close? So the price that you're looking at here and everything, what's that?
Yeah.
Replace, thank you. So the numbers that you see here as far as, dollars and cents is modeled with Pleasant Hill, but we are looking at all 3 options. So this one obviously, right, replaces a school with a new school on a new site. And then some of the compromises with this, right? You do have, right? The reality is the existing sites are space constrained, and so I'll show you the site plans in a moment. But you see that they are there's some compromises around like outdoor play space and parking, and then this one also, as far as construction impact during construction, the plan today is to do simultaneous renovation. And so where we'd be building one new school, you would have 2 other schools, actually, and Whitworth and the middle school. So all the other schools would be under construction for renovation during school time. So that's a little bit higher impact. We haven't modeled the operating cost. That's coming in this next phase. And so, so that's really where like this one, the benchmarking compromises are. I'll talk about the middle school when we get to those slides. They're on this one, but we'll focus on those in a minute. Next slide, please. And here you can kind of see what are those, benchmarking metrics that this doesn't meet. Again, the big ones are the outdoor spaces. So next slide. Here's what Blue Point, the proposed site diagram for Blue Point today. So it builds off the back. We'd probably have to bring Phil in to get that site up because that site drops down. Then a small addition for the cafeteria off to where that fenced in area is off the parking lot. This site actually has decent parking and traffic flow already because you can come in off of the side road there for parent drop off, and then the bus has its own loop. The other thing to point out on this site is the potential, where it says potential pre-K addition. That's where the portables are today. And so, you'd recoup that space either for outdoor play space or potentially if you wanted to do future pre-K or another addition, you'd have that space back. Slide. Here's the bubble diagram that just kind of shows the layout of the school. So it is a 2-story addition. It adds the classrooms that are needed for the enrollment projections and then adds the separate cafeteria. Next slide. Excuse me. At 8 Corners, again, a 2-story addition. This one's a little bit tight with parking, but you see it kind of overlaps into the parking area that will get refined in our next go around on design. You do have some space where you could maybe, if you wanted to do a pre-K addition in the future, you'd have to reroute that fire lane. But it does have, obviously improved traffic flow and things like that. but you sacrifice some of your play area. And so I think there's enough space on the lot for hard, playground as well as soft turf field space. So this site actually is one of our better sites as far as that goes. Next slide. And then here's the bubble diagram for that one as well. And so you see the separate gym and cafeteria is kind of at the bottom left. A two-story addition there. So you add the classrooms, art and music spaces. Slide. Pleasant Hill is tight. I think everybody knows that. I think the main thing to call out as you look at the site here is this requires us to clear cut that whole lot. And so there would be some impact to those neighbors. Granted, it's the town's property, but the woods there kind of in that back corner where you see, upper field area is woods today that, the neighbors play in and things like that. That would all essentially be clear cut and turned into fields for the kids. There's not a ton of space on this plan for playground. This is one of the big compromises here. Is there's really not enough room to put a playground anywhere. So we'd have to get creative with that. But it does improve parking. I think, if you're not aware, today there's almost no parking on that site. And so for like school assemblies and things like that, parents are parking in the surrounding neighborhoods and then walking along Island to get to the school. So it does improve the parking as well as the traffic flow. Next slide. And here's the addition, the bubble diagram for the addition. It moves the main entrance over to the side. Again, gives it its separate cafeteria from the gym, and then enough classrooms for art, music, and the growth that we expect. Next slide. So this is the bubble diagram for the new school. Obviously, this is conceptual, just kind of shows how we potentially could lay out a new school of this size. So this is the smaller. We looked at a couple different ways to do a fourth school or a third school. This was the smaller one that we chose. It's 45,000 square feet. And so obviously in this instance, you meet all of the benchmarking. Where you see, if you go back to, you don't have to change the slides, but if you look at the benchmarking, you do see there's some question marks TBD on this, right? So it's site dependent, depending on what site we put this on, how the traffic and outdoor play spaces would lay out. Next slide. So moving on to the consolidated school. So this is a K2 school, so it is different from the previous consolidation that went to referendum in 2023. It's much smaller. The benchmarking compromises are really minimal. You lose, and these are common throughout all of the options, because those compromises actually happen at the middle school in Wentworth, and they're constrained to just the parking. And so this one does meet all the benchmarks. Obviously would be site dependent as well for some of those outside play spaces. And in this case, right, you would build you're building on a new site, so you're not impacting the schools during class time. Next slide. And here's the benchmarking diagrams, kind of lays out what I just said. Next slide. Again, a conceptual diagram of a floor plan, what it might look like. So this would again meet all of the programming requirements and the benchmarking standards. It's 120,000 square feet. Looking at Wentworth, so these next slides are common for both options. So this is what we would do at Wentworth, and then we have a couple different things to look at for the middle school. At Wentworth, we would do a one-story addition here on the back, which is how Wentworth, frankly, was designed that you could add on to it if you needed to. We looked at different size additions and things like that. To keep the cost and the scope as limited as possible, we're moving forward with a one-story addition. So it meets the requirements for enrollment, and still keeps the cost pretty limited, and gives again room for future expansion if we had a boom in growth or a bubble that came through or something like that, and you needed to add on, you could add on to the other wing, or you could add a second story to the new addition. Next slide. And so here is the bubble diagram where you can see those classrooms added there at the back of that wing. It's a pretty limited renovation. It's only 3,700 square feet addition, and then about 1,300 feet of renovations. Next slide. So the middle school. In the middle school, we've looked at a number of different options. And in fact, the middle school has become one of the most, I don't want to say contentious, but certainly there's a lot of different ways we could attack the middle school problem. And I think as the school department and Harriman have kind of brought the committee along, we've learned just how challenging the middle school is. I think most of us came in thinking this was really, you know, hey, we got to deal with the primary schools, middle school. Yeah, we got to get rid of the portables. But as we learned, you know, more about the middle school, the realities of what that school is facing, we've spent a lot of time iterating on a solution for the middle school. And so the reason that you see, you're going to see an option 1 and a 1.2 is because there was a 1, there was a 2, there was some different variations of both of those, and now we're kind of at a 1-2. So we have had a few votes on the middle school. I'll say this, we've chosen to maintain the more expensive, more expansive options at this point for the middle school, with the understanding that as we move forward, we have the option to de-scope and reduce costs. What we didn't want to do was make the decision to reduce cost and reduce scope, and then realize towards the end, we actually need to add it back in and kind of give the public whiplash with the price. And so we've kept those options in. We're going to continue to refine and look at these. So option 1, if you go to the next slide, option 1 puts a 2-story addition over where the parking lot is today, and then it expands the cafeteria. And so both options keep 6th and 8th grade in there. If you go to the next slide, this will show you, here's the 2nd floor. So again, just the extra classrooms on the 2nd floor. There was an option 2 that was much more limited than this, but essentially what option 2 didn't address the cafeteria. And as we learned about kind of how the school is dealing with the cafeteria and how important that need is, the committee felt we should strive to keep a cafeteria expansion in this scope for this one. And so Harriman came up with option 1.2, which is on your next slide. And so this is the same, right? So the footprint is the same, but it's a 1-story addition instead of a 2-story addition. And if you go to the next slide, had to get a little bit creative with the art and music spaces. So those get moved out to the to that 1st floor addition, which gives us the space to expand the cafeteria as needed. But it means that this option would not have the needed classrooms for our 2035 and 2036 group. There is I don't want to call it a bubble because we don't know whether it's a bubble or a trend yet, but our enrollment projections show our peak enrollment in those years. And so as those come through, you know, if this is the option we go forward with and the enrollments prove out to be true, right? Our projections prove out to be true. This would be undersized in those days. We'd have to come up with a solution for the 2035 and 2036 groups that come through this school. Next slide. Again, no 2nd floor on this one. Next slide. So that was quick, down and dirty. What do we do now? So obviously, you know, public feedback is kind of where we're at right now. We have a forum coming up. We're working on the next iteration of the survey to kind of get feedback on these 2 options. Our site selection subcommittee is hard at work trying to narrow this down. Now that we have a little bit more, you know, granular idea of what we're going to do, we can work to narrow down those sites. The site is important. The community wants to know, you know, what the site would be. It also impacts the cost and the layout of the schools, and so that's a priority for us moving forward. I know that the superintendent is working on operating costs, so we'll have that in our models as we think about, you know, narrowing this down to one choice. And then we will continue to iterate on refining the design and driving that cost down as we can. And ultimately to get to the end of June with a one preferred option that we bring as a recommendation. I'll stop there and open it up.
Perfect, Charlie. Thank you. One thing that I will say before I turn it over to council and school board questions is, having served on the SBAC 1 and now having served on SBAC 2, one thing that Charlie kind of undersold, in my opinion, is just how much consensus building this committee has been able to achieve. Very large committee. There are lots of diverse opinions. People are coming to this from all areas of town. We have people who do have children, people who do not. And the way that we kind of worked our way from 7 options down to the 2 was we first did a doodle poll, and everyone used their devices, and there were 2 on the bottom that were clearly not going to pass the sniff test for the committee. And so we eliminated those. We then put up pieces of paper around the room and everyone was given 2 stickers, and you could choose one of the consolidated options and then one of the options that would preserve our neighborhood schools. And it was so apparent that everyone had made really well-informed decisions, that we were taking each other's feedback into consideration. People were chatting as they moved their way around the room, making sure like their assumptions were correct, or that, the way they were leaning was in line with what their vision for how this project is going to go. And when it was all said and done, the 2 options that moved forward, it was crystal clear. It could not have been more clear, frankly. And so I think we went into that vote having really done our due diligence and made sure that everybody was feeling good and prepared to vote. And it was really a successful evening, considering the task that we asked this group to do.
Yeah, the one thing I'd just add to that is that before the vote was taken, we broke into, I think, 3 groups,
Yep.
some smaller
Mhm.
groups,
Yep.
and it was just 20 minutes of kind of just conversation. And I traveled around and visited all 3, and they were all very rich conversations. And it was clear because when the voting came, I think that was done in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, it was remarkably fast.
Yeah.
So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to council and school board for questions. Yeah, Counselor Fellows, why don't you get us started, please?
April, I don't know if you or maybe Charlie wants to speak to the discussion around putting forward sort of one of each type, so to speak, because I observed a little bit of that just as, in the back of the audience. And I thought that was a fascinating conversation, given the history. I think it might be helpful for folks to hear how that evolved.
Yeah, I introduced that. Well, I didn't introduce it. It was brought up in a couple different meetings. I think one of the committee members just kind of blurted it out one day as he was talking, like, geez, we ought to, we can see the benefits of the consolidated school, but we hear the community. We probably need to let the community see both of those and make an informed decision and compare and contrast. And so the night of the vote, I thought that was worthy of a little bit more discussion, and so we brought it up. Ultimately, the motion was made and passed. It wasn't a unanimous choice. I think there was some feeling in the room that let's just let the two top choices float to the top. What I will say to that is when we took that straw poll on Slido, it was very clear that the 2 choices that ended up being selected were the 2 choices that were at the top of that Slido survey anyways. And so, but I think that, the thinking there was, we don't have a complete data set yet, right? I think, the consolidated school has some benefits when you start to look at operating costs and things like that. And so as we try to be very sensitive to, how much is this actually going to cost the taxpayers? I think we owe them the opportunity to have all of that data in front of them. And so, so that's kind of how we got there was let's put one of each of what we think are the best proposals of those 2 types of schools forward that obviously that we think that the community would rally behind and actually pass out a referendum.
Other questions? Counselor Cushing?
First, amazing work. Confusing. Following along, yeah, in detail. I was confused a little bit about what you said before, Charlie. Are you contemplating actually putting option A, B in front of the voters and say, pick one, or?
No. So, so over the course of the next 2 months, right? Our task now is to compare these two, gather community feedback through surveys and the forum, and ultimately present one option
One option,
to go forward to referendum.
okay. And so as I look at it, and serious comment related to the confusion, particularly if you don't have kids in the school, I need to focus and look and remind myself of the geography and so forth, and I'm interested. So the question I would ask you, which you don't have to answer today, but I think you should have an answer to, is when I imagine somebody who is not a follower, but somebody who is just a citizen who likes education and, general voter comes in, they will be faced with a binary question. We want a school or don't we want a school? What we know in the past was that those who didn't want a school were able to define it in a few words. So the question then is, the challenge for you is to find language and a way to express it. I don't know what that is. A little bird suggests that the word consolidated might be eliminated from your vocabulary. I would check.
I tried that. I tried that in the fall.
I would check AI for synonyms.
Yeah.
But you take my point, is
Yeah.
that there is a lot at stake here, and it would be a shame to see this good work be jeopardized by misperceptions or mischaracterizations. And I think we need to keep that strong in our minds.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I will take a moment and just respond to that. I think that our biggest challenge over the next month is exactly what you said. How do we communicate clearly to the public what their choice is? We have to make sure that we're, I've mentioned this before in this room, right? You have to balance completeness with conciseness, and so making sure that we can package this up in a way that's easily digestible, that people are informed and can make an informed decision on the two choices in front of them. So it's a good point, and something that our communications team is wrestling with every day of how do we do this and how do we put it in front of people. So in fact, I wasn't at the meeting today, but we're talking about that in the survey. How do we craft the next survey in a way that not only educates the public, but also gets their feedback and informs them, so they're giving informed feedback instead of just emotional feedback.
John, you want to go ahead and try?
Is it working? No?
People online can hear him, but we can't.
People online can hear you, but we cannot hear you in the room. Okay, we'll keep working on it, John. Yeah, you could just start writing notes and holding them up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna email.
Oh, he's
gonna try
and text me.
Oh, yeah.
Other school board or council feedback, questions? Yeah, Bill.
I must applaud the last meeting. The process has been really extended out and out. We all show up, and at the last meeting, I felt like we had grasped a lot of the fundamental issues. And I felt more satisfied going home last week than I had previously.
Yeah.
Getting all the information that each of us thinks is necessary, it has been a difficult task. Not that we haven't worked at it, we have. I think things that remain outstanding that are of strong public interest would be a site selection. Part of the reason that is, and the public should realize this, is not been publicly disclosed, is because there's a lot of privacy around the various choices. The town manager, Tom Hall, has taken a very strong lead role in gathering the information that would tell us
Mhm.
where are we gonna go with this? Which sites are going to work? And to the extent that Tom can speak to any of that, that would be great. That's probably my first question.
Yeah, it's a hugely important part of it, and yeah, I'd like to say that we'll have a site that we can test with the community through the survey. I'm not sure if we'll actually be in that far along. Part of the challenge is it's kind of the chicken or the egg. So in some parts, and Charlie spoke to this earlier, we're still analyzing which of the 3 K2 schools we would replace. And some of the sites lend themselves better to whatever choice that might be, if that's the chosen one. So we're kind of waiting for each other. The site selection committee has pretty much done what they can do, waiting for the full committee to get through its process and tell us, is it a large school? Is it a small school? Would it be better on this side of town or that side of town? The good news is we have 5 options that I think are all equally good, some better than others to address, depending on the solution. My challenge is kind of keeping all those balls in the air. And to Councilor Donovan's point, these are sensitive conversations. At this point, all of the 5 property owners are aware that we're considering them, so that's really not what this is about. We are destined to provide a detailed update to the full committee at their next meeting, April 7th. And we'll be doing that in executive session, really to protect the confidentiality around those conversations. But believe me, as soon as we can, we want to be shouting it from the rooftops because we know from survey results that the site is really important to people.
Yeah.
And so we're ready, poised and ready and able to act when we get the information we need.
And just for the public's benefit, I just want to say, the building committee subcommittee for site selection was open to anybody on the committee that wanted to do it. People self-selected. The chair of the subcommittee, Tom Eschner, is here. He has been amazing at keeping us all organized and on task. That we were meeting weekly for a little while, and now we're kind of down to meeting as needed. But the participation, again, I can't emphasize enough how grateful I am for the volunteers who are doing this work. Our citizen volunteers are amazing, and the amount of time that they have given to this, the professionalism that they bring to it, the open-mindedness, that just being so prepared and making sure that we are able to present to the community what they really feel like is our best option. And so I'm really grateful to them. And I sit on that subcommittee as well. Yeah. Yeah.
I would ditto your comments about the staff. One of the nicest parts of going every week to these has been getting to know new people who are committed citizens of this community.
Yeah.
And I've really enjoyed that. I've grown so much more respectful of the school board and the thoughtfulness and strength of the school board members. And the community needs to know that those of us who are sitting back and sort of observing this process and seeing it unfold, it's been, for me, a very impressive part of the experience. The other issue, which I think the public is. Yeah, it is. The other issue, which I think the public will be interested in, because the capital cost of the building is a big deal. And that really draws a lot of attention. Well, the operating cost of the system, as it's impacted by whatever we decide to do, is also a big deal and receives a lot less attention. And so we should be on the lookout for that information, because here we are, you try and take 2 steps forward, but it sometimes takes you 1 step back, and we divert with different options, and we get A and B and Z, and each one presents, and Harriman has really been very responsive. No griping, no grousing from them. And so I think we should be pleased with the selection process. Good people, I've thought. But that's, the public should be aware, the operating cost has the potential to be as important or more important than the capital cost. So we'll be on the lookout for that. We'll all be working on it because it's under development.
Mhm.
So, thank you.
Thank you. John, we're going to give you a third try here.
Is the third try a charm? Is it working?
Oh, my goodness.
No?
I'm on his phone.
Yeah. Well, that's enough from John.
He'll take the punchline.
I can't tell you what he's thinking.
Stole April's line.
Sorry, John. All right, we'll keep trying to find a workaround for John. Other school board, yeah, listen.
Oh, it was right there.
No.
Oh,
It's me all the time.
kind of extending on, kind of what Counselor Donovan was saying. It's been really amazing to see, I sat on the committee as well, as one of the school board reps and was part of the committee members in SBAC 1. It has been really incredible to see the dedication level of our community members who have joined the committee and the different angles they've brought for consideration. And I think as these two options start to boil down, having everyone come forward with their different viewpoints and ways of approaching it, I think will help the community understand what they're signing up for. So things like, if we go with ABA, Pleasant Hill will be clear cut. So that's going to have a large impact on our community in a certain part of town, whereas it won't impact others. And all of these little things from kind of this diverse group helps to kind of bring forward a lot of issues that with a less diverse group may not have been highlighted. And of course, then we all go out into our community, to our lives, and then we talk to our groups, and it helps to spread the word and bring things up. And I've heard multiple times committee members come back and say, I was talking to my friends in my neighborhood and we all brought up that we're concerned about this. And I love that that happens each week because it gives us an opportunity to deal with it now. Is there a solution we can find? Is there a way we can approach this? Is there a way we can make this better, rather than finding out in November and finding out that caused it to fail and we never even saw that on the horizon. So, a huge kudos to the members of the committee that are here tonight and continue to show up every Monday, even if they couldn't make it tonight, and kind of all of their aspects. Because I think as operating costs come out, as all different viewpoints and everything comes forward, it's going to be a nice way to present everything to the community.
Going back to just, if we can, for a few minutes, talking about the cost. Obviously, it's central to the conversation every single meeting. It's never far from anyone's mind. And we are well aware that, that there are members of the community that were expecting to maybe for the committee to put out smaller numbers in terms of rough order of magnitude at this point. And, I think it would be good if, Charlie, you could kind of just explain a little bit about what these numbers mean and what further refinements we expect to do as a committee.
Could you pull up slide 6? When he gets to it.
They're trying to figure out.
They're
John.
troubleshooting. Yeah, I understand. So, slide 6 shows like all the options and a price range. And I actually meant to talk to this. I'm glad you brought me back to it because I forgot to mention this. The variance on that price range comes down to middle school option 1 versus 1.2. So if you look at that slide and you go, well, which is it? Is it 133 million or 124 million? That's where we've got to decide. Do we accept the compromise of knowing that, the middle school has the potential to be undersized in 10 years? Or, right, and the trade-off there is you save $10 million, or do we build it now? And so those are the discussions we're gonna have over the next couple of weeks. I'll just say personally, I don't want to speak for any individuals in the committee, but I think there was a lot of folks who felt like I did, in that I struggled to eliminate option A as the cheapest option here. I know that there's a large constituency that is very, cost aware and cost conscious. And I knew that the perception of eliminating that could play negatively for us. But I think that as the committee considered all of the facts, right? And as you really start to understand the challenges at each school and the challenges with doing, renovations like that, there were so many compromises that it felt like it was not a complete solution, and that we'd be back here doing this again for those schools, right? Because you'd constantly be chasing, they're whatever they are, 60 years old, right? So we'd be chasing this for a long time. And so as much as I really wanted to move forward, I couldn't bring myself, and I'm just speaking for myself, not for the committee, but I couldn't bring myself to accept that level of compromise in the benchmarks. And so those are the kinds of things that we wrestled with in this. And so right, the middle school is the easy one. Back to your point, as far as like, what are we doing now to try to reduce this cost, right? It's also important to note, these are all rough orders of magnitude, right? And so they were, the estimators were provided a very rough scope of like, hey, and conceptual drawings. And so now that we're down to kind of 2, we can get a lot more detailed in those designs. And then we'll go back to the estimators for a more refined estimate. And simultaneously, right, we're looking at, are there other opportunities to cut? Is there somewhere else that perhaps, we'd find some cost savings? We are still looking at construction methodologies and options for different ways to build that are perhaps cheaper. And so, all of those are still in play. Just, we can't get too hung up on these numbers here. They're ROMs. They're gonna get better and more refined. And I feel safe saying that the committee is very committed to driving these costs down over the next few weeks. I don't know where they'll land, but I suspect they will come in well under 130 by the time we're done.
I would just add that Harriman has been amazingly responsive to presenting us with options, and then giving us what a rough cost and what the drawbacks or benefits of those options would be. And I think just about every meeting, someone says, well, could we tweak it this way? Could you come back to us next week with tweaks on a smaller cafeteria? Could you come back to us with tweaks on if art and music do not get separated? And they have been able to answer those questions for us and provide us the numbers. And a lot of times we see what is being compromised and the price tag that is associated with that. And we say, okay, that's probably ultimately not worth, making that shift. And so there's been a ton of discussion and refinement around price, and I anticipate that is not going to change anytime soon.
Yeah, just to add on to that, right, with Harriman, they have been a really good partner. We try to be conscious of like throwing extra work at them every week of like, hey, could you just redesign that again and again and redo your work over and over and over and over again? And I can only imagine the frustration when she shows up to work on Tuesday and has to have her drafters, rework things. But they've done it every week without complaint. They come prepared with every question that we've had, whether they've had to reprice something or rescope something, or at least come back to define the problem better for us and help us understand, the challenges with an idea. And so yeah, they've been great, and I don't think we've been easy clients for them, but I certainly appreciate their responsiveness.
Diane.
Yeah, I would just add in that, in addition to what Charlie has already spoken about in terms of costs, that yes, these are rough order of magnitude. These also include soft costs for the project and an estimated price of what the deals that we would have to pay for land. I know that has been coming up as a question that we've been receiving, because we do have something on our website where people can raise questions and ask for more information. And those two areas are things that people have been asking about. And so what you see up there, those are all-in prices, again, at a rough order of magnitude. And once we are able to make determinations about a specific site, then that is the time at which Harriman will be able to more fully develop a building and how to site it on a specific piece of land so that we can achieve more savings.
Yeah, great points. Counselor Cushing.
Thanks. Charlie, I wanted to respond to something you said earlier. You said you struggled with getting rid of the more expensive option.
Cheaper option.
Cheaper option. You struggle with getting rid of the cheaper one as opposed to keeping the more expensive one. Well, in either case, I think my point is sort of the same. And that is that your calculus seems to be around what's the best investment. And trying to explain that to people going forward will have a whole lot to do with what the voters' time horizon is and how they see it. But it's an important repositioning, I think, because it is true that we are investing in our young people, but it's also true that we're investing our capital and we're trying to get the best performance from that money. So it goes beyond altruistic things, and I just wanted to emphasize that. I will share with you one of today's personal experiences. I went to the Home Depot today, and I bought a piece of cabinet grade plywood, and I paid $55 for it. Last week, it was $45. So that's a pretty big jump in one day. And there are some estimates that the average person going to see some around $900 in increased day-to-day costs, which is a big hit going forward. And I don't have any clear answers to that, but I think that we're all, as we go through the next period, are going to have to be cognizant of that and make sure that the folks on the other side of the conversation feel like we're on their team. So,
yeah, thank you.
All right, we've come up with yet another workaround for Counselor Anderson. So we're gonna now call, Liam is gonna be his proxy.
I have my script.
Okay.
So I'm reading verbatim. And the request was for Tom to read this, but I'm standing in. So first, congratulations. What an achievement. I think it's important to take a breath and celebrate the huge success of getting down to 2 options. We'd also like you to pause and clap, but I really appreciate that the committee took the feedback from the survey and identify a potential solution based on that feedback. So kudos for taking the time to do that and showing the community you are listening. A couple of questions. For option 1.2 for the middle school, what does it practically mean to the students if we go from 1.2 versus 1.0? Is it larger class sizes for the year, or are we adding temporary portable staff? So that's the first question. He has a second question after that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Counselor Anderson. And unfortunately, the answer is I don't know, right? I think we go, so I want to make sure I understand the question. In 2030, you're asking what would we do if we're undersized and we have a student population that comes through and we don't have classrooms for them, right? Yeah, I think that you know, we have to consider that. I don't know that we will present a solution to that as part of our recommendation. I think it'll be you know, kind of flagged as a compromise we made, and if that's what we go forward with, we understand that when the time comes, we potentially need to look at a portable solution for a couple of years, or you know, migrating some different classes. And I know the superintendents have some creative ways to maybe solve that, but.
So I think the other thing that I would just add is, again, you know, really pertinent to all of this conversation is what will enrollment look like over time. Right now, as Charlie alluded to earlier, we have data that solidly shows us what Scarborough births look like and how that relates to this 2028, 2029 dilemma for primary schools. And the question that remains to be answered is, is that increase in births a temporary thing? Or are we going to see that as a new trend in Scarborough? And so certainly it is going to behoove us to continue to watch those live births, because that will help us to project out and decide, by 2034, is that going to be a bubble for the middle school, or is that going to be a continued issue, right? And so we've only scratched the surface on our committee about this, but really, I think what will be an outstanding question is, if this does show as a trend or a pattern, what is the right timeline for these bodies to consider if you go with the lower middle school option now? Is it 5 years from now that we would have to revisit a middle school addition so that we could be fully prepared when these students begin to load up in middle school in 2034? The other piece that I would just point out is both of these options, the middle school option and the Wentworth option, increase class size to 24 students per class. So we've been really sensitive to understanding what the school board ratios are for class size. At the same time, if I use the Wentworth project as an example, very small addition there of 3 classrooms. Originally, the first proposal had 10 classrooms at Wentworth. That would allow us to maintain that current top class size at 22. By moving that class size to 24, what that has done is it has helped us realize over $7 million in savings, because anything beyond where we currently are at would require us to build a significant add-on to our heating and cooling system. All of the core spaces at Wentworth were overbuilt at the time of building so that it could absorb an addition. The heating and cooling system was not. And so certainly that has not been an easy decision for us to come to. But again, not knowing at this time whether that bump that we're seeing in births is just something that is a temporary thing or is a long-term trend, we're trying to be really mindful of budget and thinking about that.
Thank you, Diane. And just to be clear for the public, and I'll come to you, Larry, when we're talking about this bubble, these are kids that have been born.
Correct.
So, we did extensive modeling of what the enrollment projections could be. And, those are based on birth trends and migration trends and potential housing stock and all kinds of like really complicated factors. But at the end of the day, when we're talking about this group of kids and we typically refer to it as the bubble, these are children that have been born that we anticipate, unless something significant happens in Scarborough and everyone moves away, that these are potential Scarborough students that are here. These are not hypothetical children that have yet to be born. And so we have taken that into consideration in our planning, that it's not exactly the same as forecasting 10 years out and trying to anticipate what's going to happen. We already know that these children are born and that they're, born to Scarborough homes.
And to drill down a little bit more, right? What does that actually represent? In 2022 and 2023, our birth rate in Scarborough increased by 25%. So that's a really significant number. In 2024, the number is more typical of what we've seen as a trend. And so again, it behooves us to watch that to see, is 2025 going to look more like 2024, or is it going to look like 22 and 23?
I'm going to go to Larry and then I'll come to you, Councilor Cushing.
When I raised my hand, that was one of my points, April, was about what you talked about. And I thought the other thing, both for these bodies and for the public, as a hard example, the middle school project had grown over our progress. But I think the superintendent could give you a great example of something that we certainly didn't realize with the current situation of the cafeteria in the middle school and how that's impacted. If Diane, you can just. take this
Yeah,
away.
so the cafeteria at the middle school is very much undersized, right? Because if you think about the middle school, it was built not with a portable of 12 classrooms in mind. And so currently, there are 5 lunches a day at the middle school to ensure that there is enough space for students to eat. In one of those lunches, the students have a split class. So they go to class for 20 minutes. The teacher calls class. The kids go and eat lunch and they return for the second half of instruction. As you know, I don't think you need to be an educator to realize that that is not an optimum learning situation for students. In a couple of other lunches, we have termed it our lunch lounge to make it sound more palatable, but we actually have about 60 students who eat in the rotunda of the middle school, which is basically our hallway, because there is not enough space in our cafeteria. Next year, with the students that are coming to us from Wentworth, we will have 6 lunches. And so again, it is not optimum to start serving lunch at 10:30. It is also not optimum to finish lunch at almost 1:30 when the school day ends at 2:25. So, you know, we will now need to build in a snack break for those, you know, earliest lunch kids to have some replenishment in the afternoon. And we'll have to do the opposite for students in the morning who have the last lunch. And so again, all of those are things that we will readily do to make the schedule work, but there is an impact on academic time and learning by needing to do those things.
Thank you, Diane. Councilor Cushion.
So first, under the heading of making the best of a bad situation, awesome repositioning. So with regard to birth rates, with the exception, I think, of in the 70s, they've been gradually declining since the baby boom year. You probably know this. We are heading into another 20-year season where we could expect that birth rates are going to continue to go down nationally. That's according to AI and some other research. But the point then, when you talked about, you know, we had a 25% jump in birth rate and so forth, the confounding factor to that is in-migration from offering people a sane, stable environment with good schools and so on and so forth. And that's harder to predict, but it certainly needs to be assessed and monitored, because if you're relying on general birth rate statistics, I think that you can sort of sit back and say, well, we're in good shape.
And in-migration is something that we are also tracking as well. Our 10-year trend for in-migration is actually 37% by the time that students start first grade. And so again, you know, we've got trackers in terms of things that we're monitoring. We're constantly monitoring on a year-to-year basis. Who are the students that are moving into the district? Who are the students that are moving out? How does, you know, that scale change? But, you know, point is well taken.
Other comments about the middle school? And then I know John had another question. Okay, take it away, Liam.
So John's second question, with the loss of the leader as the channel for communications to make the public aware of progress as we go forward, how is the committee making up for this? Is additional funding needed to get into mailboxes over the coming month? Or is that available in the 2025 or proposed 2026 budget requests?
I turned around to see if anybody from my comms committee was here today. Yeah, again, another great question, right? This is a challenge that we're actively wrestling with. We are looking at all mediums, right? How do we reach the most members of the public with the clearest, most concise information we can? The loss of the leaders is big, right? I know that was my primary source for local town information, right? I don't no offense, Tom, I don't read the town newsletter very often. I read the leader, all right? Yeah, I read the leader when it hits. But, right, it'll be interesting, frankly, right? We have to, we seek this feedback in every survey we've asked. How do you want us to keep you informed? And so we'll use that information, and people's, information consumption habits are going to change, right? As Diane joked, right? I'll have to start reading the town newsletter because I don't get the leader anymore. And I'm certainly not I probably won't go to the leader's website, right? And that's just a fact. So we have to figure that out. I wish I had a more solid answer for you, but it's something that we're actively wrestling with right now.
Yeah.
Did I capture that correctly?
And I think we plan to ask people on the next survey, well, now that this thing has happened, where are you going to go for your information? The leader, as you know, will still be publishing articles. We plan to use some social media, utilize other channels to the best of our ability. And of course, the town newsletter, I'm disappointed to hear people don't read it. But I also wanted to thank you for the offer for additional monies in this push to get information out to people. Hopefully the survey that we put out next will give us a little insight into that.
Yeah, the other pivot that we've made, actually just within the last week or two, and I think we've pushed out some information about how to sign up for it, but we have added the capacity on the building website for people to sign up to receive automatic notifications anytime there's a new posting on the building website. So we feel like that is a pretty significant add. It does require someone to initialize that. So you have to, go to the website to do the sign up for that. But, from that point, if you take that first initial step, then you have the ability to have those things just drop into your email automatically. So, to your point, Charlie, you don't have to go and seek that out.
Yeah.
You can just be receiving that on an automatic basis.
Yeah, and I want to be careful I don't get too far ahead of the comms team, but I took it upon myself this weekend to engage in one of the social media conversations that was happening, and I kind of felt like I was on a Reddit Ask Me Anything board, right? And I thought, you know what, I've got good engagement here. I have an audience that's engaged and asking questions and getting facts, and so I think it's an idea that I was going to float to the team of hey, maybe we need to do stuff like that more, right? How do we we know we don't get we get 20, 30, maybe 40 people come to the forums and things like that. So we need to meet people where they are, and we need to figure out how to do that better.
It's the challenge of all time, right? Like we grapple with that on every important issue.
Yeah.
So yeah, Councilor Fellows.
Thank you. To go back for a minute to something, back to the granular, and this kind of relates to comment before about all the different constituencies and how sometimes you may be surprised by who speaks up when they hear about something that affects something that wasn't on your radar. I think it was the ABA scenario, the Blue Point, looked like the ball field would be probably lost. And I recall from my days as a Little League dad that that was used pretty heavily, has been used pretty heavily for Little League. So I just wonder if, I'm sure there are a million things like that across the three schools, but.
So the ball field has actually become a little bit problematic. We've learned that I think when the ball field was first built, the fill that was used was basically a stump lot. And so what has happened over time is that those stumps have rotted and created sinkholes. We actually had a staff member experience a pretty significant injury while out there with students. And so that's generally not being utilized at this time, probably to the same extent that you might
Makes me
recall.
feel old. I guess it has been a while.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna say that explicitly, Cory, but I
You're not
was
wrong.
gonna tell you, my boys have never played baseball there.
That's good to know though.
But I think the broader point that you make is these are these are community schools and places that people have memories of and, you know, they're pillars within their neighborhoods and people are going to have those memories and whatever changes happen is going to have some impact to that. The reality is we can't solve this problem without creating some change and some disruptions and people are going to have some sentiment about things and we'll hear the feedback. And, you know, when I started this, I didn't fully grasp how important the neighborhood schools were to the community, right? I've come to understand that that's not just, you know, something that a couple people feel nice about. It's a real thing in the town. And so there'll be a lot of that. And we'll learn, hopefully people communicate to us and we learn more about those and we won't be able to solve for all of them, but we'll try.
I do think it's a good point though with the outdoor space. We recently had a board meeting where we reviewed the benchmarking criteria that was up with the green checks and the red X's and everything and had some discussion about that, you know, the ball field, the outdoor space and that as a benchmarking point. And, you know, Scarborough's been the recipient of the Molly grant, the Outdoor Learning Initiative. And, you know, I think come spring, you know, we're all itching to get outside. You see that 60-degree day on Friday and everyone's hoping to get out. First beautiful day at one of our elementaries. My daughter was out apparently 5 times. I was thrilled. If you cover everything in building, there's nowhere for them to go. And these sites are locked. There's communities around them. There's homes, there's, you know, other things. So I think it is really important to keep that in mind as we continue to look at these layouts and these ways that we're having our town grow and seeing the impact that we could quickly fall into. And I think that's a big one because, you know, if it has an issue of a sinkholes and things like that, that's a safety concern, of course. But once you backfill it and put a building on it, that's pretty permanent.
Other questions or comments? If we are feeling satisfied as a group of bodies here, I will go ahead and take public comment, but I want to make sure that everyone has had their say. Is there anyone in the room or online that would like to make public comment? I don't always take public comment at workshops, but we have about 20 minutes before I need to start our business meeting at 7. Come on up. I have 2.
After you've done enough. By all means. They've heard enough out of me.
Welcome.
Hi, what an amazing process. Phew. Nina McKee, 309 Black Point Road. I just have a question. I just wonder about the process. You're developing designs, but not really aware of where the design is going to go. And so doesn't that make a huge impact on what the design is? So I just wonder how that works.
It's a great point. And so you'll see, if you look closely at some of the benchmarks, right, you'll see X's or it'll say, you know, TBD site dependent. And so for new construction, right, which is really what you're asking for, the bubble diagrams that you see are conceptual. And so it's not a floor plan necessarily. It just kind of shows you could fit all of this into approximately this square footage. This is what it might look like within that square footage. Once we, and then that also tells us how big of a site do you need. So if you need, you know, if you're building a 45,000 square foot building, you need space for fields, playgrounds, parking, bus loops, parent drop-off loops. Okay, you need about 10 acres, right, give or take. And so that informs, right? So they kind of inform each other, but we won't get down to actually, you know, design floor plans until we have a site to lay them over.
So the price can be a lot different once you get, if you get the site. I mean, maybe you'll have to squeeze it in.
So that's a great question, ma'am. And I did ask our consultant kind of how accurate are these you know, ROM numbers, and yeah, it could shift a little bit, but and they're in the room, so if don't let me misspeak, Lisa. But generally, right, they're pretty close.
Well, I just congratulate you. I think this is a remarkable process. And the way you've been so transparent is really, really good.
Thank you.
So I'm sure it was a lot of fun.
And the fun continues.
Still is.
Thank you, Nina.
Just on that point, if I could, I mean, all projects, and certainly the two projects that are currently still in consideration, require new build and new build. So all projects do include a standard site acquisition and development cost. Certainly those will vary depending on which site is chosen, but I think what's being used is a very reasonable number for where we are in the process. We'll perfect that going forward. I'll also say that of the 5 sites that are still being considered, 4 of them can accommodate either of these choices. There's only one that is small to the point that it could only accommodate the smaller school option.
Great. Public comment?
My name's Matt Garrett. Charlie did a great job communicating in a bucket of porcupines the other day, and he had to figure out which one to pet first, and he managed to answer a lot of very difficult questions. And I think that, the committee's done a really great job paring down these options. Neither of the two are really my favorite, but they're the ones that probably make the most sense. And leaving that rough order of magnitude number in there, knowing that you could take stuff out and pare that number down, I think is a really, good way to approach it as well. Yeah, it's at the top of the scale from the charge, but it's a lot more difficult to add stuff in and convince somebody it's a good idea than it is to take it out and say, okay, you wanted us to save another $20 million. Here's how we're going to do it. And then remove those scopes as well. And you don't get the bait and switch effect. But my hat's off to the committee. They've done a great job with this, and it's been a lot of work and a lot of hard conversations. So I've said it before, Diane can probably speak to this more, but it's not always growth that drives these decisions on how big your school needs to be or what, what you need to accommodate in these benchmarking things. And the thing that I'm, screeching from the tops of the trees is that in July 1, 2028, the town's gonna be required to provide CDS services to 3 to 5 year olds. And although the state is gonna pay for the staffing, I believe, that's correct. The town still has to accommodate a venue for this. So where are you gonna put them? And under building, under designing, going with, lesser options, may not accommodate some of these programming requirements that aren't the town's idea. They may be the state's idea, or something else. So, and the committee's done a really good job keeping those things in mind, as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. For the public, Matt is our number one biggest fan. As a non-member of the committee, Matt comes to our meetings and frequently gives us really helpful public comments. So thank you to Matt.
Strong dedication.
Yep.
Dedication all around. Yeah, Corey.
Just a quick question, or I guess point of fact on the theme of cost, and maybe Tom could speak to this. My general understanding is that these target numbers were sort of the town worked
Good
backwards
question.
into those based on survey results indicating what taxpayers felt that they would be willing to pay for a school solution. Is that generally right?
That's exactly right. We did some surveying about a year ago, last spring. There was a series of questions that really were gauging taxpayer appetite. And essentially what we gleaned from that survey, those survey results, is that there was some level of support for tax increases between $200 and $400 per year. And with that information, we were able to kind of translate back to construction costs. And there's where the 70 to 130 range came from. It's worth noting, it's coincidentally, but remarkably, both the options that are under consideration are within $1 million of each other. And I bring that up because they largely meet all the same needs as the last question, the one that failed. Yet they're $30 million cheaper. And so, we've trained ourselves to be living within some financial confines for obvious and good reasons. But I just want to make sure we're taking stock of the fact that a lot of good hard work has been done, and whatever choice we put out is going to be significantly less than the last one.
Great points. Counselor Anderson is not here, or, well, I mean, he's here, but he's not able to speak, and he usually will give us our closing remarks. And and so I can tell by his excited gesturing that he wants us to put our hands in and cheer. But before we do that, I'm going to go to Freyla.
I'm not gonna try to live up to that.
I can't either.
Not gonna
No,
try.
it's okay.
I do have something that Matt brought up for me.
Sure.
And I haven't had the opportunity to listen to Matt as many, I think other folks may have. But he said something that really caught my ear, which is neither of these choices were my first choice. But both of them kind of get us where we need to be. And I think that is a place that is very not comfortable. Everybody knows what they think is the best, and for very good reasons. But if we can work on that sentiment and sort of understand how Matt got there and how to communicate that to a wider audience of, it may not be exactly how we envision the best would be, but it gets us where we needs to be. I think that will serve us very well and will make this project a lot more successful. I've been a harsh critic of the building project at times. I'm very happy when you got to 2. John, I did cheer by myself in my house. Because I felt like there were lots of options coming out. But it's evident that there was a lot of hard work that was done. That was a lot of consideration, that you did listen to many different sides. And I'm very excited about this project moving forward.
Thanks.
I think you knocked it out of the park. And so with that, I am going to go ahead and close our workshop this evening. The regularly scheduled council meeting will begin at 7 p.m. And I just want to thank you all one more time for being here and making this such a productive workshop. So thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening and welcome. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Scarborough Town Council. Today is Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025. If you could please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tody, could you call the roll, please?
Counselor Doherty.
Here.
Counselor Cushing.
Here.
Counselor Shute.
Here.
Counselor Fellows.
Here.
Counselor Donovan.
Here.
Counselor Anderson
Here, if it works.
and Council Chair Seither.
And I'm here. Just for the public's awareness, we are having some trouble with our external audio. So people online can hear our other online folks, but we cannot hear them in the room. And as a result of that, typically I have to call a roll call vote if we have someone participating remotely. This evening, we're going to allow Councilor Anderson to raise his hand in the affirmative or the negative when he votes. And, you know, we're all here to take witness and account of his votes, which is a little bit out of the ordinary. Also out of the ordinary, I am going to go ahead and make a motion to amend the agenda. I would like to move Resolution 25-004 to appear after item 3 on the agenda this evening. And I would also like to amend the agenda to move item 10, standing and special committee and liaison reports, to just after item 8 on this evening's agenda. Do I have a second? I have to roll call vote. Counselor Doherty? Thank you. Counselor Cushing?
Yes.
Counselor Shute?
Yes.
Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
Counselor Donovan? Counselor Anderson? Counselor Seither? Yes. Okay, excellent. With that, I am going to go ahead and move into Resolution 25-004. So what I will do, this is in recognition of our boys indoor track team. So what I will do is I will go ahead and read the resolution in its entirety, including all of the names of all of the boys who participated on the team, which anyone who has been to a meeting or knows me, I get very nervous for this part because I don't want to butcher your names, but I just know I'm going to. And after I've read the resolution and we've taken our vote, we'll invite the gentlemen that are here to receive a pin, and we'll take some pictures and we'll applaud and honor them for the hard work that they did this year. So with that, Resolution 25-004, Scarborough High School Boys Indoor Track Team. Be it resolved by the Council of the Town of Scarborough, Maine, that whereas the Scarborough High School Boys Indoor Track Team did invest many hours of training in preparation for the State of Maine Championship, and whereas the Scarborough High School Boys Indoor Track Team did compete in and win the Class A State of Maine Championship, now therefore be it resolved by the Scarborough Town Council in the Town Council assembled, that the following members of the Scarborough High School Boys Indoor Track Team, their coaches and assistant coaches, are hereby recognized for the great honor that they have brought to their team and the town of Scarborough. The Scarborough Town Council is proud of their efforts and hard work. Freshmen, Callan Driscoll, Colin Gandolfo, Cameron Keller, Kieran Leahy, Eli Smolin, Judah Violet, John Wolfcrum, and Owen Ziga. Sophomores, Colin Anderson, Ethan Asia, Aiden Carpenter, Quincy Colvin, Spencer Dean, Cameron Douglas, Phineas Egan, Nathaniel Ludenia, Caden Mayo, Damian Meisner, Atticus Miriam, Papa Osi, Grant Pelletier, Teddy Reed, Kyle Roy, Caden Smith, Adam Stockwell, and Aiden Williams. Juniors, Jose Bencomo, Griffith Heath, Noel Heath, Caden Humpage, Isaac Kim, Edie Knutson, Owen Macias, and Nolan Meyer. Seniors, Sam Asia, Matthew Booth, Vincent Caruso, Kevin Collins, Nicholas Gandolfo, Ethan Keller, Nicholas Cazell, Cooper Millar, Ryan Marshall, Wyatt Martin, Baxter Miriam, Nathaniel Murray, Will Patterson, Liam Regan, and Landon Springer. Head coaches are head coach rather is Derek Bayou. Assistant coaches are Alan Cornwall, Mark Hamilton, Connor Harris, Colin Jones, Joseph Menard, and Andrew Rice. Signed and sealed the second day of April 2025 on behalf of the Scarborough Town Council and the Town Manager of Scarborough, Maine. Do I have a motion? All those in favor, I have to call. Counselor Doherty. Counselor Cushing. Counselor Shoup.
Yes.
Counselor Fellows.
Yes.
Counselor Donovan.
Yes.
Counselor Anderson. And Counselor Seithers, me as a yes. Thank you very much, gentlemen. At this time, if you want to come on up, we will do some pins and take some pictures. I would love to have Coach Bayou take the podium and say a few words.
I'd like to thank the council for having us and honoring the boys and their efforts this winter. With me, I have 5 seniors and a sophomore. I have Landon Springer, Ethan Keller, Sam Asia, Nicholas Cozile, Ethan Asia, and Liam Reagan. Obviously, we had a lot of success this year. It ended in a championship. This group of guys has had a lot of success in their high school career, so there wasn't a question about their motivation. We actually didn't win last year for the first time in 8 years, and so they came in with motivation this year, and the seniors did a great job leading the way. You know, to win a state championship, you got to put in the work, but you also got to get kind of lucky. And, you know, luck was on our side this year. You know, it was a really close meet. I think we won by 4 points, but, you know, several of our competitors happened to be sick on that day. And so it really takes luck. Like, you just don't know. You got to perform on that day. So we luckily stayed healthy and got the job done. We did have 2 individual state champions. One of them is here, Ethan Keller in the mile. And we also had Wyatt Martin in the pole vault. Thank you for having us, and hopefully we can be back here again next year.
Extraordinary. Looking forward to it. Thanks so much, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. There's no better way to start a meeting. With that, I will go ahead and move through our agenda. At this point, we are on to item number 4, which is general public comment. If there is anyone in the audience, either in person or in line, that would like to make general public comment, I invite you to do so now. Please remember to state your name and address for the public record. Welcome.
David Green, I live at 135 Beach Ridge Road. I came back here tonight from last meeting because there was a bunch of inaccuracies spoken by the town manager, and I'd like to correct them. He stated that after you were notified that there was no porta potty down there, you rectified the situation. You certainly did, but why did it take an entire month? Because I'm the one that made it known. Why does it take a month? Answer that. You wouldn't have said anything at all, Mr. Hall, if I hadn't have come here. You just swept it under the carpet because you don't like egg on your face, and you got egg on your face. I'm sorry, because this is the second time in 3 years that this has happened. Why don't you fix the situation? Only take a ticky note on the computer that when you shut the water off, you bring a porta potty down. That's not rocket science. But you don't seem to be able to accomplish that. And I do not want to have private meetings with the town manager because he likes sweeping things under the carpet. And I like things to be out in the open because you 7 people here need to hear it and so does the public. Nothing gets said if I go into his office and we talk back and forth. It needs to be done out here in public. And to say that it was an oversight on your part for the second time in 3 years is a gross understatement. It's called dereliction of duty. And you also said there is no health hazard. I talked to your plumbing code enforcer Thursday. And I said, is raw sewerage a health issue? And he said, most certainly. So it was an issue. And I don't know who went down and cleaned it up. Probably nobody. Why don't you look into that? See how clean it is now. Like I said, it's an easy fix, Mr. Hall. All you got to do is put a ticky note when you shut the water off, you get a porta potty down the co-op. That's not too hard to ask for. And it is a health issue, according to your own plumbing inspector. So I just wanted things to be square. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to make general public comment this evening? Seeing no one in the room, anyone online? Seeing none, I will go ahead and close general public comment. Item 5 is the minutes from our March 19th, 2025 meeting. Do I have a motion?
Second.
All those in favor, Counselor Doherty?
Yes.
Counselor Cushing?
Yes.
Counselor Shoup?
Yes.
Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
Counselor Donovan? Counselor Anderson? Counselor Seidler is a yes. Thank you. Item 7 are the treasurer's warrants. I took care of those before the meeting this evening. And item 8 is the town manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple items to report on this evening. I was very pleased with my colleague, the superintendent, to propose a budget for FY '26 last Wednesday. Thank you for your attendance and attention at that meeting. This does certainly mark the start of our budget season. This evening, we're moving forward with first reading, which really initiates that process. And that puts us on a trajectory for public hearing on April 16th. And then we'll be looking at, I believe, May 7th for second reading. In the intervening weeks, the Finance Committee has organized a series of budget reviews. Predominantly, those will occur on April 14th and 15th. This year, they're looking at doing 2 kind of larger segments, I believe the mornings of both those days. And we've slotted in certain departments. That schedule will be published on the budget portal. So we're well underway at this point. There are a series of budget roundtables that have also been scheduled, and certainly more information is forthcoming with those. We have also made available our frequently asked questions. These are questions that started really internally, and they've been added to, and they will continue to. We endeavor to update that list with new questions on a weekly basis, and of course, not just questions, but answers as well. So very pleased to have that up on the portal starting today. The 2 projects, construction projects, those being Eastern Trail and also Black Point Road, are out to bid as we speak. We've scheduled the bid opening for April 17th. And I'll be very pleased to report the results of those. But at this point, a number of contractors, as is normally the case in the bid solicitation phase, are asking questions. We're certainly providing responses and very hopeful that we'll get multiple bids for each of these projects. Pleased to report that I've been asked to be part of a property tax relief or property tax reform working group. This is an initiative advanced by GPCOG, and it really was an outgrowth of the Chairs in the Circle discussion, which had property tax relief as the predominant theme of that discussion. Again, just pleased to be part of that. We're just arriving at our initial kickoff meeting, and I'll have more to report as we go forward. But I believe the intention is to do some full analysis. Certainly legislative advocacy is a cornerstone of that. But I think first we really need to understand and diagnose the problem. And There'll be some, I expect, commonalities among communities, but there'll also be some unique differences. And so I'm hopeful that that analysis will be detailed to really identify those differences. Included, just as an aside, as I think about legislative advocacy, is a fairly small amount in the budget next year. It's to join what's called the Maine Service Center Coalition. Scarborough is a member of Maine Municipal Association, and they advocate on our behalf. But let's face it, there's nearly 500 communities in Maine, and the interest and needs of all 500 communities aren't all the same. I think Scarborough has reached a level of size and significance that many of our needs are quite different than most of the rest of Maine. And where we best align is with what's called the Service Center Coalition. I don't know the exact number, but it's probably close to 24 communities. It's typically the larger ones across the state. Look at the legislative docket, often advance their own legislation, but this is really about being far more involved in the legislative process and advocacy. So I think it's going to be it's a wise investment for us to really start to up our game in that regard. The council met earlier this evening on the school building project. For my part, I've been certainly part of all their committee meetings, but in particular, I'm involved in the site selection side of things. As I reported earlier, there are 5 sites that we're still kind of have risen to the top. One thing to note, and we're actively securing interest such that we can enter these properties and do vernal pool testing. That's allowed and permitted only 4 or 5 weeks in the spring of each year. And frankly, the season just opened. So time is really of the essence. What's critical about that is that if we don't conduct that this spring, we lose a whole year. And so it's really essential for us to take advantage of this very narrow window. And I've had good success with gaining access to these properties. So I'm pleased to at least gather that information before we can advance a single site and pursue that more aggressively. There's also something I'd like to make the public and the council aware. There's a GPCOG event called Reimagining Route 1. I think they're looking from the Brunswick area or maybe even north into Freeport and certainly south of us. But this is a regional effort to really bring communities together that have Route 1 in common, if you will, and having us talk jointly about our sections of Route 1, what we wish it would be in the future. So there's some upcoming meetings. In fact, on April 15th at 5:30 in these chambers, there'll be a public workshop. And I believe there's 2 or 3 others in the region, but this will be one that we're hosting and pleased to do so. The other thing to make you aware, the short-term rental, this is a discussion that happened at the committee level last year, did not move forward, but we're looking to resurrect that or at least to start the conversation again. Our planning director has organized just kind of a discussion to kind of get the interested parties back to start talking about this. This will be tomorrow in these chambers at 12:30. And it's really intended just to be a kickoff discussion to kind of bring us back to where we left off and advance it through our typical process at that point. And the last thing I'll just mention, today was the deadline for nomination papers. So for the Board of Education, there were 3 seats, and I'm pleased to report that there are 3 candidates, those being Charlotte Jacobs, John Kelleher, and Jillian Trapani Huff. Pending action of your item on the agenda this evening, there will be potentially nomination period, 10-day period for a seat on town council, but that will be pending your action here. We have been in touch with the printer of our ballots, and we're able to do this additional nomination period such that we can have both elections occur on June 10th, which I think is ideal and certainly efficient. So with that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Questions for Tom? Seeing none, I will close the town manager's report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 10 from our amended agenda is standing and special committee reports and liaison reports. Normally, I would start with Counselor Anderson, but he is muted. And so I will start with Counselor Donovan.
The school board has adequately covered the committee that met. And I will leave it at that.
Thank you. Counselor Fellows.
No updates since last meeting. Rules and Policy meets next Wednesday, the 9th at 5 PM. Long Range Planning meets next a week from Friday, the 11th at 8 AM.
Perfect, thank you. From me, I am the liaison to the Vulnerability Working Group. They met this morning from 9 to 11. Some really great conversation as we work our way through the report that is being created by our consultants. We have some amazing dedicated professionals on that committee who really know their stuff. And so we are very lucky to have them weighing in and giving our consultants some really important feedback. One thing for the council's awareness is that there was discussion at that meeting today to shift the timeline slightly. We had thought that maybe the deliverables were going to be ready by June timeframe. But because of some things that have come up, one of which being the desire to have an updated drone study done, the problem being that the plovers are here. And so it's not good to fly the drones when it could potentially impact the plovers. And so there's some discussion today, preliminary discussion about shifting the timeline a little bit. So just for council awareness, we may be adjusting when they would present to us. And I did propose August meeting would be an appropriate time to meet with them if they are ready to present with us. So just have that kind of in the back of your mind. I think that's it from me. Councilor Shu.
Thank you. So the Conservation Commission is taking up one of our goals, which is how Scarborough could become a tree city. So we're going to start exploring that with them, which is good. The Parks and Conservation Land Board is actually having a workshop tomorrow and they're going to be diving into the open space plan because part of that plan provides a guideline and some tips for them on the procedures and the checklists that they use when they have an application for bond funds. So that's going to be part of their workshop tomorrow. And then the Community Services Advisory Board doesn't have another meeting until next month, but I did just want to bring some attention to the fact that last year, the Community Services Advisory Board did do some work on the animal control ordinance, which we were going to be moving forward to the May ordinance committee meeting. It has gotten a little bit of attention, so I just wanted to make people aware that that's happening. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Shu. Councilor Cushing.
Yes, I attended the monthly board meeting of Eco Maine. They presented a budget which is favorable and I think controlling cost. In the long term, Eco Maine is looking to add towns and cities mostly south of here to broaden the economic base of support and to keep your garbage bill low. That is an organization that sort of runs in the background and we take for granted. But at each opportunity, I'd like to remind people that they are really doing their part to provide environmentally safe waste disposal. So, and the Communication Committee met and we heard a wonderful report from the staff on the good work that they've been doing to provide information to townspeople around the budget. Liam presented a series of lists which can be used now to begin to reach out to people for the budget events and for other important communications. We also discussed the demise of the leader with perhaps one conclusion, and that is that the town needs to take serious consideration of, in this budget period, of exploring ways of making sure that we're able to stay in touch with our residents on critical issues. And let's see, what else did we discuss? We also had a brief discussion on emergency communication protocol, which was a follow-up to the mass casualty event. And I believe the committee and staff were going to take a look at notification procedures around some of those events that allow public officials to stay in the loop. And that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Doherty.
Yeah, communications, Dawn just wrapped it up as usual very well. I was there. The one thing on the communications with the leader going away, the town newsletter, one thing I thought of is the leader just comes to you in the mail automatically. Everybody gets it, so you read it because it's there. but you're not gonna come to the town, hall to get it. And, so I think we should have a mailing. I mean, I don't know how much that would be and what it would cost, but maybe I would just mail it to everybody and then they definitely would be communicated with. Harbor Committee that met again either, so I think that's it.
Great. Thank you very much. Counselor Anderson, I will say, if you have anything super pressing that you would like reported on, I will break protocol and you can text me, and I will be your proxy if you absolutely can't resist the urge. Give me a thumbs up. Yeah, I figured. Okay. With that, I will go ahead and move through our agenda this evening. Order number 25-022 is 7 p.m. public hearing and second reading on the proposed third amendment to the Higas Parkway Tax Increment Financing, TIF, District and Development Program. Tom.
Yes, this was delayed. Normally, I think you would have expected to see this at your last meeting. The TIF statute has a 10-day public notice period for the public hearing. Typically, everything else per our charter is 7 days, so we just by a day missed it, and that's why it wasn't on your last agenda. Essentially, this item is amending the development program for the Higas Parkway TIF. That TIF was limited in terms of what was allowed to use TIF funds for, and essentially it was in 3 categories. One was to pay the costs of a credit enhancement agreement, which have since been satisfied. The primary one was to cover debt service costs related to installation of sewer and other utilities along Higas Parkway, which has been retired. And the third one allows us to pay for economic development expenses, namely SEDCO. The only one that still pertains is SEDCO, and this district continues until 2033. So what we're proposing to do is to give ourselves additional flexibility to use TIF funds. And in large part, what we're proposing is in line with the sort of allowed uses that we've afforded ourselves and DECD has approved in the downtown TIF. And we just think that flexibility will be helpful going forward.
Excellent. Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment on this item this evening? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Second.
Council discussion? Seeing none, I will call the vote. Counselor Doherty?
Yes.
Counselor Cushing?
Yes.
Counselor Shoup?
Yes.
Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
Counselor Donovan?
Yes.
Counselor Anderson? Counselor Seithers, yes, thank you. Order number 25-029 is a 7 p.m. public hearing and second reading on the proposed changes to Chapter 311, the Town of Scarborough Schedule of Fees. These were presented to us at our previous meeting by Kristen. Tody, do you have anything to add, or Tom,
Kristen,
by way of introduction? Oh, Kristen's
I
here.
don't think there's anything to add from staff's perspective.
Okay. I don't think that this needs any more of a run-up than that necessarily. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment on this item this evening? Seeing none, do I have a motion? Council discussion?
Yeah.
Yes, Councilor Doherty.
Yeah, this is
Thank
just
you.
on the part of the beach fees. Is that what it is?
No, this was a pretty comprehensive list of fees. It's in the packet. Each additional change that was made by the town clerk.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah,
Good.
Liam has brought them up for us. Thank you, Liam. Yes, Councilor Cushing,
I
question.
do have a
Oh,
question
those.
that does relate to beach fees. That what we saw last time, I thought was a very nicely researched adjustment to fees based on market and so on and so forth. And the beach fees seem to be an outlier to that, where we had all kinds of community participation and, in my view, not the best outcome. And I just wonder why, when I look at all of the fees that are on this list, largely affect businesses. It's a license, it's a building permit, it's this, that, and the other thing. And those we just sort of go through, and just an observation is we do a market adjustment to them. And then we come over here and we have a committee of residents do it. And I'm trying to understand what's the rationale?
Yeah, I can appreciate that that those two were taken up very differently. Tom?
Yeah, the primary difference is that there was a committee that, that work started through. This is really staff driven. And this is one of the things that I asked all members of staff to look at our fee schedule and please come forward and propose any fee increases. The town clerk, took that request seriously. What I didn't provide, but what certainly exists, is her exhaustive work. There were 9 communities, peer communities that, she surveyed, and what essentially being proposed is to put us kind of in line with our peer communities. So I think there's good rational basis for these fee increases being proposed.
I absolutely agree with you. And in my view, the outlier in terms of the process is not having beach fees, which are resident fees, not business fees, included in that. And then if we wish to divide the question or do something else, it's a fee. They should be treated like all fees, with all due respect to the committee. It would be much more efficient to do it that way. And also, I think, apply a consistent methodology to fee setting. So I'm going to vote for this. I absolutely agree with you, Tom. I was impressed by the good work that Kristen and her team did. And
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Fellows, you all set? Okay. Any other council comment? Seeing none, I will call the vote. Counselor Doherty? Counselor Cushing?
Yes.
Counselor Shoup?
Yes.
Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
Counselor Donovan? Counselor Anderson? Counselor Seither is a yes. I show that as 6-1. Thank you. Old business, for old business this evening, we have order number 25-032. Act on the request to approve the names posted to the various committees and boards as recommended by the Appointments and Negotiations Committee at the March 19th, 2025 Town Council meeting. These names were read into the public record by Counselor Donovan at our previous meeting. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment on this item? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Second.
Corey, please don't wait. We're missing Counselor Anderson because he usually participates. I know. Where am I? I have a motion and a second. Is there any council discussion? Seeing none, I will call the vote. Counselor Doherty? Counselor Cushing?
Yes.
Counselor Shoup?
Yes.
Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
Counselor Donovan? Counselor Anderson? Counselor Seither is a yes. I show that as 6-1. Thank you. New business, order number 25-033, first reading and schedule a public hearing on the proposed FY 2026 municipal and school budget.
Yes, I do have a presentation if you wish. I am hopeful that you were mindful of our meeting just a week ago and we could forego that, but I guess at your pleasure. Again, as I said during my comments, this initiates the budget process. It's the council's first step in a long process. There will be a public hearing on April 16th. Second reading is scheduled at this point for May 7th, all of which leads us to the validation vote on June 10th. I guess the big picture of this budget at its inception or at its proposed status looks at a net budget increase of 5.27%. When we consider expected growth in the value of the town, that estimates a tax rate increase of about 3.4%. Just historically speaking, that's certainly in line, if not a bit less than our normal starting point. And I have supreme confidence that the Finance Committee and the full council will find ways to consider the budget to meet the needs of our residents, but do it in such a way that respects taxpayers as well. So pleased to support you as you embark through this process.
Great. Thank you very much, Tom. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment on this item this evening? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion, please. Council discussion? Yes, Councillor Cushing. Thank you.
Yes. I just want to be clear to the public that this strikes me very much as an administrative matter here, that what we're trying to do is get the ball rolling. And so I think that my vote, and perhaps the votes of others here, should not be construed as anything other than let's get the ball rolling, roll up our sleeves. The fun is about to begin. Thank you.
Your point is well taken. Thank you, Counselor Cushing. Other council comments or discussion? Seeing none, I will call the vote. Counselor Doherty? Counselor Cushing?
Yes.
Counselor Shoup?
Yes.
Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
Counselor Donovan? Counselor Anderson? Counselor Seiler is yes. I show that as 6-1. Thank you. Order number 25-034 is first reading and referred to the planning board. The proposed amendments to chapter 405 zoning ordinance, section 11 off-street parking regulations to amend electric vehicle charging system requirements. And our planning director is here. Welcome, Autumn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an item that was presented to the Sustainability Committee in August of 2024. The new EVCS ordinance was originally adopted in January of 2023, and I think when it was put into place, there was an understanding that we may need to look at that in the future after we live with it for a bit. There was a memo sent to the Sustainability Committee with some additional changes and recommendations specifically around large-scale retail and the requirement for level 3 chargers. The level 3 chargers are much more of an expensive investment. And so we spent quite a bit of time in Sustainability Committee reviewing the memo and the request. And what you have before you is the draft that they moved forward. We also included some staff recommendations for some other things that we had noticed that we needed to change. So overall, we combined the tables to make it easier to administer. The parking tables and the EVCS tables are all now combined. We addressed single family and 2-family homes outside of subdivisions not having to be required to put in the charging infrastructure. We updated definitions. We also included the requirement that EV spaces needed to be rounded up to an even number, as that's the way that the chargers work. We did remove the requirement for level 3 chargers in the retail greater than 25,000 square feet. We made the changes that are on the table in your packet to the commercial uses. The real thinking was to make sure that we were providing for charging where people would be at for work for an extended period of time, and removing the onus for those businesses that people are just in and out of, maybe a dental office or a fast food restaurant. We also added provisions for the location of shared infrastructure, and we did add a substitution clause for level 3 charging, 1 charger in lieu of 4 level 2s, and we updated the ordinance to reference the newly created sustainability fund. This went to Ordinance Committee in March, and they recommended moving it before the full body, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much, Autumn. Does anyone have any questions for Autumn before I turn it over to public comment? Seeing none, thank you. At this time, I will take public comment on this item. Anyone wishing to make public comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment. Do I have a motion? Council discussion? Counselor Shoup, thank you.
Sure. So we did have a good discussion about this in ordinance. I was educated a lot on EV chargers. We all were. And I think one of the things that I just kind of want to comment on, because my understanding is that we are one of the few towns that actually have one of these ordinances. So I think this is going to be what we're going to see is we're trying to figure this all out. And so as we're being educated as counselors, we're also trying to figure out as leaders what this ordinance is going to look like and how it works. So I appreciate the Sustainability Committee and staff to continue to kind of plug away at this and try to make it work the best way it can.
Thank you, Counselor Shoup. Counselor Fellows.
Yes, I would echo what Counselor Shoup said. The ordinance committee discussion was very educational, a little bit technical at times. And there's, it's an inherent challenge when you're talking about something like this that's kind of cutting edge and a little bit of a moving target, but I definitely commend town staff and Sustainability Committee for really moving this forward and being responsive and nimble within reason to sort of adjust to the realities on the ground. This is a very, progressive ordinance, not only by Maine standards, but by any standards. So glad to see it coming forward.
Thank you. I was on the Sustainability Committee, the first iteration of this ordinance. And so I was also treated to the massive amount of education and learning that goes into trying to develop an ordinance when you really are on the front edge of something like this. And so I very sincerely appreciate the work of that committee and then ordinance taking the time to also bring yourselves up to speed and make an educated recommendation to the full council. So thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to make comment? Yeah. Councilor Doherty, thank you.
Yeah, I just think that we're over governing. I mean, we just have committees after committees and passing ordinances after ordinances and just let the private sector do what they want to do when they want to do it. Unless it's a problem or there's an issue, we just keep micromanaging everybody's life and fees and all of this stuff is just, I don't think it's worth it, the time and energy. Everybody's spending all this time and then they're discouraged if the voters vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Councilor Cushing, thank you.
Well, my question is, what is the upside to the voters and the people of Scarborough for us to being first? I don't know the answer to that. I certainly know what the problems with it are, and we basically become the test case. I also think that there is an argument to be made that electric vehicles may not necessarily be the solution to our CO2 and our climate change problem because of the work involved in the batteries. We fixed one or two of these at my auto repair shop. And the first question always is, how do we avoid blowing ourselves up? So again, I just wish somebody would explain to me why I should vote to do this. I understand that we should have some regulation, but I'd love to hear from you all to make a compelling case for why this council and this town needs to be on the bleeding edge of this. Thank you.
You're welcome. I could speak to that for me personally, in terms of my experience with the development of this and kind of the rationale of the committee is really this idea of EV readiness. And that we are on the leading edge of a lot of development happening in Southern Maine. And so to that point, making sure that our builders, whether they're commercial or residential, are meeting that need and making sure that at the very least we are EV ready and making sure that the infrastructure is being put into the planning process as opposed to finding out after the site plan is completely finished and the building is up that in order to add EV chargers or add that kind of technology or accessibility, that it would come at significantly higher cost.
So does this ordinance require in all parking lots, new parking lots, that there be provisions for EV chargers?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's not all parking lots. I shouldn't just speak blanketly,
but in certain circumstances, there is a requirement. Is
in
that
certain
right?
circumstances,
So-
and Autumn can speak to those specifics if you'd like her to.
No, I know, I'm fine. I'm really, you work very hard. Stay right there, okay? We don't want to overtax you. Okay, well, so, when I think of this, from that nasty business perspective that people accuse me of, I say to myself, gee, if I'm building a building and I'm interested in attracting people to my building, whether it be a retail establishment, a mall, this, that, the other thing, then I'm going to be looking to my market and I'm going to be deciding what kinds of accommodations do I need to take care of my customers. And so it seems presumptuous of the town to sort of, to Scott's point, it'd be one thing for the town to say, if you're going to put in an EV charger, it needs to look like this and conform to these standards. That's perfectly reasonable. But to say to a developer under certain circumstances, of which, again, we're first, so we don't know them all, when you should put them, I'm assuming, Walmart wouldn't have been the first place I would have thought, geez, I need EV chargers, but Walmart's got them. They must feel that there's some kind of business case to put EV chargers in the Walmart parking lot. So again, I think that it really is a market question, and it really is an appropriate role of government question. And it's some of each here, in my view.
So just to bring the conversation back around and to be clear, we already have this ordinance in existence. And so what is before us today are some modifications that are being made in response to market, in response to feedback that we're getting from builders and developers saying this level that we currently have on the books is too high. These thresholds are too high. And so there was some recalculating and redistributing of the numbers to make it more palatable to the developers that are coming to our planning department.
So you've made my case. I just got here too late.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other discussion or questions? Seeing none, I will go ahead and call the vote. Counselor Doherty?
No.
Counselor Cushing?
No.
Counselor Shoup?
Yes.
Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
Counselor Donovan?
Yes.
Counselor Anderson? Counselor Seither is a yes. I show that as 5-2. Thank you. Order number 25-035 is first reading and schedule a public hearing and second reading to consider a zoning change request for a portion of R050002, being an approximate 2.15 acre parcel located at 42 Two Rod Road, currently zoned rural farming to residential to R2, and amend the official zoning map of the town of Scarborough. I apologize, I botched that a little bit. Autumn can speak to this, and I know that the applicant is also in the room.
Thank you. I'll just
Thank you.
tee it up for you.
Thank you.
This was a request from the applicant. This did come before you all just a little over a year ago. The planning board originally had recommended approval, and ultimately at second reading, this item did fail before you. So they did meet the 1-year requirement. I think at that time there was some misunderstanding about maybe perhaps who the applicant was. Being a resident of the town was something that came up. But this particular request is for 42 Two Rod Road. In your packet, I included some images of the property as it was purchased. They purchased a property that has a single family home and then a second driveway that had an existing garage type structure that was really in pretty bad shape. The desire was to subdivide the lot into 2 lots, but they are zoned RF, and that requires a 2-acre lot. They are surrounded by R2 on 3 sides, so they made the original request to go from RF to R2 in order to subdivide the lot. It would still be a 1-acre lot with 100 foot of frontage. They proposed to use the existing driveway that garage structure was on as the secondary access. They have, since the original request, remodeled the existing home, and they are coming forward with that same request. The planning board did have a public hearing. Our zoning process requires that it goes to planning board first for land use considerations, and the planning board did recommend to you all to approve it once again. And then Katie Treem is the applicant, and I believe she would like to speak as well.
Perfect. Are there questions for Autumn?
I do have one.
Perfect. Thank you, Counselor Cushing.
I wasn't quick enough, I'm sorry.
That's
But you get your steps in. So, in your professional opinion, is there any downside to moving this forward? Are there, ramifications or whatever that we don't see?
Honestly, no, not based on our comp plan and the surrounding zoning, the fact that there's public water available, the existing curb cut is there, the neighboring homes. I do know that the neighbor that is to the one side has sent in a letter of opposition, but from a planning perspective and the way our zoning works and our comp plan, I don't see a downside.
Yeah, I'd send you one of those letters too if you were next door to me. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. At this time, I will open this item up to public comment. If there's anyone wishing to make public comment on this item. I'll let Nina go.
Hi, again. Nina McKee, 309 Black Point Road. I just quickly, I just look at you guys and I think of you as friends. But you know something? I miss Counselor Anderson sitting up there. Counselor Anderson, you look like you're in the penalty box. I miss you. Well, I just very quickly want to ask whether this would make any dent on future rural farming in the zoning. Would this make any possible um, change in that rural zoning that's around the land?
We can speak to that during council discussion, Nina. Sure.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi there. My name's Katie Treem. I live at 37 Old Neck Road. My business partner, Joe Christopher, who also lives in Scarborough at 3 Memory Lane, purchased 42 Two Rod Road as a business opportunity from a seller who was looking to sell their parents' estate. They approached us about purchasing the home as it had years of deferred maintenance and was uninhabitable, and they knew that we had the means to fix that. As we prepared to purchase and remodel the home, we recognized that the property was in the RF zone with a neighbor on one side also in the RF zone and a neighbor on the other side and up across the street in the R2 zone. We met with the town planner and the code enforcement officer about the possibility of splitting the 2+ acre lot into 2 1-acre parcels, and they both agreed that it could be done if we were able to rezone the property into R2 zone. When we came before the council last year, there was some concern expressed about spot zoning. Spot zoning occurs when land is rezoned from a use that is inconsistent with the surrounding zones. Given some of the recent challenges the town has faced with neighborhoods that abut commercial and light industrial development, we can understand why the council would want to avoid potential conflict. Our request is consistent with the surrounding zones as well as the town comprehensive plan. We are requesting to rezone 42 Two Rod Road from the RF zone to the R2 zone. Joe and I are committed to addressing the housing crisis that are impacting the communities in Maine. As a realtor, I recently attended a conference where Maine State economist Amanda Rector and NAR Chief Economist Lawrence Yun emphasized the urgent need for housing. They shared that Maine must produce 86,000 homes by 2030 to meet demand, a challenge that we've been aware of for years, and the need continues to grow. We are not a large out-of-state developer. We are Scarborough residents who want to contribute a local solution in a meaningful way. We have already fully renovated the single-family home on this lot, and the positive feedback from the neighbors has been encouraging. This rezoning request is another step in our efforts to help address the housing shortage in a responsible and community-focused way. We appreciate that the Scarborough Code Enforcement Department maintains a fixed number of permits issued annually as it supports Scarborough's sustainable growth. This lot split would align with those permit allocations and all other town ordinances when the time comes for construction. We appreciate your consideration and welcome any questions and feedback you may have.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to make public comment? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Second.
Council discussion. Counselor Shu.
Sure. So I was on the council last year when this came, and I guess my recollection of why it was denied is a little bit different. I don't think there was a confusion over residents. I think there was confusion over if the resident was actually occupying it, if they were buying it for their sole purpose, if this was their residence, and they were saying, hey, we want to live here and add on to the property that we were doing. One of the questions that the public comment just said, was this a change to rural farm? In my mind, this is a change to rural farm because we're taking a lot that is in the rural farm zone and we're taking it away. So we are making the rural farm zone smaller if we approve this. And so to me, that is a change. It's small, but I think it's important to justify, because when we think about the character of Scarborough and what draws people here, this is this rural farm zone. And I feel like we have been plugging away at our town and taking away the character that we have. And so we have the rural farm zone, and I understand that we have a property that is on the line, but what concerns me is that now the property next to it is going to apply, and other properties are going to continue this process. And personally, as a counselor, I do not agree with this. I think that we need to maintain the character of Scarborough. I think that we should not be filling in and changing zones to meet the needs of the state of Maine. I mean, my understanding is we issued some of the most building permits in the state. I really feel like we've done our due diligence with trying to meet that need. I think this is a good time to highlight the difference between the planning board and the town council, because the planning board, their job is to look at land use, the town ordinances, and how they work with the development in front of them. So of course, I think in a town planner, when you look at this on paper, of course, this makes sense, but that our job is not a town. We are not planning board and we are not a town planner. We represent the residents of Scarborough. And sometimes it's hard to know what the residents of Scarborough are thinking. That's why we do surveys. And I think the survey that we got back, the biggest feedback that we got was that growth, we need to do something to stop growth. And so, we've done what we could. We did the growth management ordinance. We're like, how low can we go without breaking the law? And I think we've done the best that we can. But we do have control over some things with growth, and this is one of them. And I know that it's one little spot, but I think I continue to express my concern about this type of land use and splitting it just for the simple use of this is a business use. They're trying to make money off of it, and they're splitting the lot and they're changing the character of that area, as we got an email from the abutter asking us not to support this. So I just wanted to reiterate the reasons why last year I did not support this. I think, again, we were elected to represent the Scarborough residents and they want us to do something about growth. And I think this is a little decision here that we can to try to control it.
Other counselor comment? Yeah, Counselor Doherty.
Yeah, one of the main things in town was individuals, people wanting to do something. I'm in support of that. I think we allow developers to 3-story, big buildings, apartments, and, huge amounts of development. And if an individual in town, a resident of the town of Scarborough wants to do something, they gotta jump through all kinds of hoops. And I'm opposed to that. So I will back them 100% because it's an individual, and that's who I want to support, is the single individuals in town. They want to. I think we should have more of that than large development.
Thank you. Counselor Cushing?
I have to say that I echo Scott's comments. I think that, and that was really why I asked Autumn if she saw the cascading effect, that because I think those are legitimate concerns. But it strikes me that if you have local people trying to do an entrepreneurial thing, put a couple new houses up here, family homes, which are probably starter homes, likely to be more affordable than some of the other things we're building. I think that's a good deal. So I intend to support it. And I listened to the planning board's discussion and I thought it made sense. Thanks.
I'll speak to this and then I'll go to Counselor Fellows. I was also on the council when this came before us last time. I supported it last time. I will say I didn't really prepare anything, but I will say that, just to your point, Counselor Shoup, about changing the character, obviously as a lifer here, I was born here. I'm very sensitive to making sure that we are maintaining the character and the things that people love about living here. Where I differ from you a little bit, I think, on this particular one, is that I don't view this as changing the character. I really view this as improving and taking something that had fallen into disrepair, that maybe wasn't desirable to live next to, and taking it on and preserving it and improving it. And if that benefit, is to someone who does a little bit of real estate development, we can call it whatever you want, but I would love to see some of the homes in town that have fallen into disrepair be redeveloped. And to this point, having another lot next to that one, which aligns with the zoning that is directly adjacent, I think just makes sense. And so I am also in support of this one. Counselor Fellows?
Thank you. I'm in support as well. And I think you articulated things pretty well. I also, and I do appreciate Councilor Shoup's concern about, and she didn't use these words, but sort of the risk of sort of a slippery slope type thing and maybe setting a dangerous precedent. And, you know, these things come up on the planning board as well, whenever there's some kind of relief that's granted, zoning board as well. And it's a legitimate concern. But this elected body has the discretion to evaluate each of these things on its own merits. And I think in this particular case, given the surrounding land uses and the fact that, you know, we're still talking about acre lots per home. I mean, that we're not talking about a lot of density here. And I think it's is it going to move the needle on housing in Scarborough? Not really, but it is still subject to the growth permit requirements, the growth ordinance. So given that, and finally, I don't see any issue with someone, as Councilor Cushing said, being entrepreneurial and looking to make a little bit of money in the process, particularly if they're Scarborough residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Donovan?
I agree with the comments of the previous two speakers. I agreed with the analysis that the planning board went through. I appreciated the fact that it went through this sort of process so that it was carefully reviewed. And so I will support this.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, I will call the vote. Councilor Doherty?
Yes.
Councilor Cushing?
Yes.
Councilor Shoup?
No.
Councilor Fellows?
Yes.
Councilor Donovan?
Yes.
Councilor Anderson? Councilor Scyther is a yes. I show that as 6-1. Thank you. Order number 25-036 is first reading and schedule a public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendments to Chapter 421, the Town of Scarborough Authorization of Outdoor Services Ordinance, amending the applicable time period for May 1st, 2025 through November 15th, 2025. Autumn.
Thank you. This is an ordinance that you all have put into place for the last few years. In 2020, during COVID, the idea of allowing for outdoor tents came up and for the community. And when we did it that first time, everyone liked it after that. And so for the past few years, originally we thought, well, we'll make people go through the site plan process and get an outdoor location for their tents and they can get that approved. That's quite expensive and can be time consuming. Sometimes these businesses just call up and say, oh, I'd love to have a tent up. It's really hot this summer. We're getting really busy. So this is something that we've been doing the last few years. And if you can see on the memo, every year the dates have moved up. We're getting requests to do these a little bit earlier in the season. So this is essentially an ordinance that allows for the deputy fire chief and then my office to review these tent permits to make sure that they're appropriately placed, they're in the right spot, they're not hindering any safety or parking, and then they can be put up for the allotted time. So that's all this one is for.
Great. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Autumn? Yes, Councilor Doherty.
So this is a deregulation?
I don't know if it's a deregulation. Right now, you couldn't put up a tent outdoors without some sort of, so this is allowing those businesses to be able to do it. It's a small permit fee and then they can come through without having to go through the lengthy site plan process. So yes.
They
that's
couldn't just do it themselves. but they
correct.
did do a site
Right.
plan.
Right. And this is an easier, faster
And
way to
now
do
the
it.
town says if you give us some money, you can do it.
Well, it does take inspection
With
time
the
to,
fees and
yeah.
stuff, and that's what comes to this is, it sounds like it's the mob, saying, pay a little and you can do this. But thank you.
Is there anyone wishing to make public comment? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion, please. Council discussion. I apologize for chuckling, Councilor Doherty. I'm not laughing at you. I just chuckling that you referred to us as the mob. I'm not sure that I
Speak to that?
Sure, certainly.
That's just the way it's coming across. It's like, basically, whenever, it's like the food trucks, it's like, well, if you give us a little money, then you can do it. And, you have to make these ordinances and stuff. And it used to be, you could just, people did what they wanted to do. I mean, we've got the parking thing down at Pine Point, that may become an issue pretty soon. It's gonna have to be, I guess, because the harbor master has made it his mission to tell people that they can't park cars in the yard. Because supposedly there's an ordinance for a parking lot ordinance in town for businesses and stuff, but this is something that's been going on for years down at the beaches, and it helps the community. These people doing this gets the traffic through. It's like for 5 or 6 days, hot days on a weekend at the beaches, and they do it. And I've had people calling me now that, you know, they're worried about this, and they've been threatened that they're gonna be fined huge amounts of money if they do it. And they're providing a public service. So, yeah, this, again, it's just micromanaging. We're doing all this. We're here every month with a whole bunch of stuff to, you know, and we're worried about overworking our employees. Tell them, relax. Everything's fine.
To your point, Counselor Doherty, we do have an existing ordinance that would not allow for these businesses to have these outdoor seating areas. And so a vote against this evening would prohibit those businesses from being able to do that. And so your points are well taken. I just want to make sure that we recenter.
I do understand that. My point is they should be able to just do it without any fee or anything. They should just be allowed to do it unless it becomes an issue. Like you said, she said there's a safety thing or something, and maybe they would have to come up and let the town know they're gonna do it. I mean, I don't know what the problem is putting a tent up for a party or something. I don't know what it is, but you know, you can't put it in the middle of the street, and obviously you have to have things where they can't set it up in a roadway or something, but anyway, yeah, I would probably vote for it because I consider it a deregulation.
Thank you, sir. Any other council comment on this one? Seeing none, I will call the vote. Counselor Doherty?
Yes.
Counselor Cushing?
Yes.
Counselor Shoup?
Yes.
Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
Counselor Donovan? Counselor Anderson? Yes, and Counselor Seiler is a yes. Thank you. Unanimous. Order number 25-037, first reading and schedule a second reading to approve the expenditure in an amount not to exceed $260,000 from the Land Acquisition Reserve Fund for the purpose of purchasing property located at 49 Grant Road, identified by the Scarborough Tax Assessor's Map as R029 Lot 007, as recommended by the Parks and Conservation Land Board, and authorize the town manager to execute any and all documents as are necessary to protect the town's interests. Welcome.
Hello, Jessica Sargent, Beach Ridge Road, Chair of the Parks and Conservation Land Board. For simplicity, I call us PCLB. We have a long name. We met on March 13th and thoroughly evaluated the application and unanimously voted to recommend that the town council authorize $260,000 be spent from the previously approved land bond to assist the Scarborough Land Trust in purchasing a conservation easement on 60 acres. The notable conservation values on this property include the protection of significant water resources from development, connectivity to existing conserved and undeveloped lands, and protecting wildlife habitat. The conservation easement will permanently protect important water resources from development. About half the parcel contains wetlands, or 31 acres. It also contains 3,500 feet of frontage along Beaver Brook, a tributary to the Scarborough Marsh. In your packet, you can see from the maps the development pressure on the surrounding parcels. It's the first map in your packet. It was attached to the letter. In addition, a recent review by the Maine Natural Areas Program states that protecting land along riparian corridors such as Beaver Brook, which is within the watershed with increasing development pressure, is beneficial to the ecology of the marsh, its inhabitants, and the species that depend on it. The maps also show that the property is important for connectivity. It connects to Scarborough Land Trust's existing 32-acre Beaver Brook Preserve and will expand the size of contiguous conserved land to 92 acres. It is also part of a 348-acre undeveloped habitat block. The property provides valuable wildlife habitat that includes threatened and imperiled species, species of concern, vernal pool species, as well as healthy populations of more common species like bear and bobcat, to name a few. These were caught on the game cameras and submitted as part of your packet. No public recreational access will be provided at the landowner's request and due to the sensitivity of the water resources. This is very common for land conservation in Maine. According to the National Conservation Easement Database, in Maine, there are 3,152 conservation easements on 2.64 million acres, of which 74% of acres do not allow public access. PCLB reviewed the property in one public meeting, and the live stream is available online if you wish to see our deliberations. The property evaluation score is consistent with previous parcels, and it's important to note actually that the point total is 100 points higher than what was provided to you in the recommendation letter. I was purposely conservative because we did not vote on the 545 points, but we did request in our meeting and receive information after the meeting from the Scarborough Land Trust demonstrating that the parcel contains steep slopes, which therefore it would receive an additional 100 points in the nitty-gritty. The request to the town is $260,000 for the easement. The value is a subset of the development rights determined by professional licensed appraiser. That is a deed restriction for reduced price that preserves and protects the land conservation values over time while leaving the land in private ownership and on the tax rolls. The total project cost is $347,762. So the town's contribution to the project would be 75% of the project, with the potential for full reimbursement to the town. The Scarborough Land Trust has applied for a NACA grant, North American Wetlands Conservation Act, in December 2024. The expected reward date is December 2025, and the funds would be anticipated to be released in June of 2026. If Scarborough Land Trust is awarded the funding from NACA, it would pay the land bond back up to the full amount, depending on the amount of the grant. I know that's a lot of information, but some folks are new, so I wanted to talk through it a little bit.
Perfect. Thank you, Jessica. Does anyone have any questions for Jessica before I take public comment? And if needed during our council discussion, Jessica is here for us too.
I was interested in information about the fair market value of the property.
So I think that the Scarborough Land Trust can speak to that because we do not receive the appraisal as a matter of public record because it's a private property transaction. So there are some sensitivities around things like that, legal
Thank you.
documents. But I'm sure that the Land Trust can speak to what they can make public.
Sure. Other questions? Yeah, Councilor Fellows.
Not to- at the risk of putting you in a position of having to speculate, and you can just say you don't know, which is very reasonable in this environment. Do you have any sense, or does the group have any sense of the likelihood of the availability of that federal grant funding, given all the freezes and pauses that are going on? I know that's a hard question to answer.
I have no knowledge of what the federal government is going to do. I can say that Scarborough has been fortunate to receive NACA funding for 2 other projects. And this parcel was selected to go for funding out of a batch of statewide projects. So it's already met some thresholds to get to this point. So it's not like they just submit an application. It's already been deemed worthy in just getting into the batch of proposals, applications.
Thank you. At this time, I will go ahead and open it up for public comment. Is there anyone in the room or online wishing to make public comment on this item? If I have a few folks, you're welcome to kind of make a little line along the side and come on up. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name is Scott Kunkler. I am the Conservation Director for the Scarborough Land Trust. I'm here tonight in support of the land bond funding for this conservation easement. The easement, as you've heard, will provide valuable benefits to the community by protecting wildlife habitat and water resources, including frontage along a tributary of the Scarborough Marsh. As you've also heard, the Parks and Conservation Land Board has reviewed the project, they've scored it, and they are recommending it for funding. And my understanding is that the PCLB is the process the town has established and has used for the last 25 years to evaluate conservation projects in the town. To speak a little bit about the fair market value, that was a question that I heard, and please, if you have more questions, I can elaborate. But the purchase price of $260,000 to protect is to protect the 60 acres. That was determined through an appraisal that was performed by an independent professional licensed appraiser that is qualified to do appraisals of conservation easements in Maine. We did get an appraisal for the entire property, so the 60 acres is a subset of the entire property. The entire property at 146 acres was appraised at $1.25 million. So if you were to do a quick calculation on that, the cost of the 60-acre portion represents about 20% of the total appraised value. So that means the 60 acres will be conserved for about 50% of the cost of what it would be to pay, excuse me, the 60 acres will be conserved for 50% of the cost of what would be paid to purchase the 60 acres. And that's a pretty typical proportion for conservation easements, about 50% of the cost to purchase it. So you've heard that the conservation easement will not provide public access. However, I just wanted to make clear that the use of land bond funding does not require public access. There are 7 different possible purposes for funding according to the land bond, the ballot measure that was approved by over 62% of Scarborough residents at the last election. This project will satisfy 2 of those 7 different possible options. The first one, to conserve water quality, natural resources, or other natural areas. And the second one is to add to existing conservation in public areas. After reviewing this project, I hope you will see what we see, how crucial this property is to Scarborough for protection of clean water resources and wildlife habitat in a community that is experiencing significant development pressure. Thank you, and I'm available for questions as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yep.
I'm Andrew Mackey. I'm the Executive Director of the Scarborough Land Trust, 25 Plaza Drive, Scarborough. And I want to tell you a little bit more about conservation easements, just in case you're not that familiar with them. Conservation easement is a voluntary legal agreement between a landowner and an entity that is legally can hold a conservation easement, such as a land trust. The agreement permanently limits the use of the land to protect identified conservation values. We call the deed of conservation easement running with the land because it's in perpetuity. Benefits of conservation easements include they're effective tools to protect land, often at lower cost than fee acquisition. It is a legally binding agreement that is in perpetuity, backed by federal Internal Revenue Code, Section 174H, if you want to look it up, and state law, Maine Statute 477, Title 33, Chapter 7, Subchapter 8. You guys can rush and do that after the meeting. I know you want to do that. Conservation easements keep land in private ownership and continue to provide economic benefits to the area. Conservation easements do not require public access, but instead require public benefit in terms of conservation values, which I'll touch on right now. Conservation values or purposes. Some examples are the protection of relatively natural habitat for fish, wildlife, or plants, or similar ecosystems. Open space that is either preserved that yield a significant public benefit, or scenic enjoyment of the general public, or pursuant to clearly delineated federal, state, or local government conservation policy. For this example, i.e. the comprehensive plan and the open space plan. or preservation of a historically important land or certified historic structure. Those are the conservation values as defined by the Internal Revenue Service Code. What is public benefit? You have to consider the following factors when looking at public benefit: uniqueness of the property to the area, intensity of land development in the vicinity. This includes existing or foreseeable development. Consistency with proposed open space with public programs such as irrigation or water supply protection. Protection of land areas relative to a government-approved master plan or similar. Programs for outdoor education, flood prevention and control, shoreline protection. Also, the likelihood that development of the property would lead to or contribute to degradation of the scenic, natural, or historic character of the area, and the consistency of the proposed open space use with existing conservation land in the area protected by easement or fee ownership. This project fits into the Scarborough Open Space Plan as follows. The vision and goals: promotes healthy, biodiverse ecosystems, is interconnected and accessible for the entire community, which includes in that description wildlife corridors, and protects 30% of Scarborough by 2030. This property is also in the open space plan focus area, and for all those reasons, we hope you will consider supporting this project.
Thank you, Mr. Mackey. Welcome.
Thank you. Betsy Barrett, 19 High Point Road, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors of Scarborough Land Trust. I support the use of the land bond funding for the conservation easement on the Grant property. I'm sorry, I need this project will not only protect wetlands, Beaver Brook, and several significant vernal pools, it will also protect upland forest around these vernal pools. It's not enough to have a small buffer around these unique wetland resources, as studies have demonstrated that spotted salamanders can utilize forest up to 800 feet from the vernal pool they use to breed, and wood frogs can utilize up to 1,500 feet. Wetlands, including vernal pools, are not isolated systems, but depend upon the interactions with surrounding uplands and nearby wetlands and streams, as do many of the wildlife species found in Scarborough. Many rare species can use vernal pools here in southern Maine, including blue spotted salamander, four-toed salamander, wood turtle, and spotted turtle. For this reason and all the other reasons mentioned tonight, I urge you to follow the recommendation of the Parks and Conservation Land Board and support land bond funding for this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Peggy Penoyer, 14 High Point Road, and have been with Friends of the Scarborough Marsh for many years, and just echoing all of the comments you have heard tonight in support of this and its importance to the marsh health. And so thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Caitlin Berry, 8 Robinson Road, and I'm just here to support this as well. For me, I'm glad you mentioned spotted salamanders and wood frogs. That's really a concern for me. With all the development happening in town, I get worried about the forest habitats as well. The marsh is obviously a huge priority and important part of our environment here in Scarborough, but there's also a lot of upland forest habitat and these vernal pools that are really important for species like spotted salamanders, wood frogs, the peepers that we all love hearing in the spring. And I think it's really crucial, they may seem small to some people, but they're part of a bigger, diverse ecosystem. They decompose things, they eat algae, they play into the entire importance of some of those wetland habitats. And obviously it just goes up the chain. It provides food for birds, for other species as well. And I think we don't know what's going to happen federally, but in the likelihood that there's decreased wetland protections federally that get rolled back it's even more crucial that we act locally to protect some of these really important habitats. And I'm really proud of what Scarborough's done so far in terms of conservation, and I think we need to really keep that going. So I think even if it doesn't have public access, it has public benefit, protecting species, protecting land, especially given all the developmental pressures here that has obviously been identified as a huge priority. I think it's really important that we support these projects that come through. So thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Eric Stunkel. I'm at A Robinson Road, for that person that just talked. I just wanted to I'll keep it brief because we've all been here for a while, and I just wanted to speak a little bit. It seems like, the town Parks and Conservation Board has really done what they're supposed to do, and, obviously talking about all these different benefits that it offers. It seems like it has a lot of value. One of the things that I like about it, in addition to a lot of things people spoke about, is that the land connects to existing land. So it's just a bigger place total, when kind of starts to slowly encroach with the development around different areas. Obviously that's really helpful so that animals can move, they can search a little bit more for food and different things without running into human interactions, and have a diverse area to breed and do what they have to do. So letting animals have their space, not forcing them more and more into those smaller and smaller areas. In our neighborhoods, we like to see things, but I don't want to see coyotes and fox and different things coming through, because I know they don't have that ability to kind of connect to another area, or just have a little bit more of that wild space. I realize we're not going to be able to save everything, but I think that this just makes good sense. And it would contribute to the 30 by 30 goal, which I really appreciate the town working towards. And again, appreciate the work that the town has done to prioritize the conservation of land. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to make public comment? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Moved.
Council discussion? Yeah, Councilor Doherty. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. The people voted that were, to do this. A couple of questions I have is, they said a grant, and if a grant comes, I assume the money then will go back into buying more land, right? The other one was, he answered it pretty much for me. I had a question about, they said that the owner still owns it, and that's fine. But I was just wondering what happens in generations. It says it's indefinite forever, so it will be in that family's name forever. It can never be changed. It'll always be conserved.
It will always be conserved.
Right.
In terms of the names and the deeds, I'm not.
Yes.
Yeah, Andrew, if you don't mind. Certainly, thank you.
So as I said, the deed of conservation easement runs with the land, or with the title of the land. The landowner can sell the land, they can give it away, they can pass it on to their children, they can do anything basically any other landowner can do with their land, but those restrictions follow with it forever, in perpetuity. So someone buying that land understands that those restrictions are in place. The conservation easement is recorded. It's a public document. It's with the deed with Cumberland County. And so often there is a reduction in value of the land because there are restrictions on it. But that's why we pay people up front. So basically, they're getting a little bit of their property value up front, still own it, and when they go to sell it, they often sell it below market value because of those restrictions, if that makes sense.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrew. Councilor Cushing?
Yeah,
Oh, are you all set,
I'm all
Councilor
set,
Doherty? Thank you.
I was
Councilor
go- I
Cushing?
was going to save Mr. Mackey a trip
Oh,
because I have questions.
come on back, Mr. Mackey. Everybody gets their steps.
I always feel like I'm the skunk at the garden party.
Not at all. Go for it, Counselor Cushing.
So first of all, I love the pictures, with the exception of the bear. I've seen them all in my backyard. And I live abutted by the railroad tracks in Black Point Road.
Oh, yeah.
My question is this, I mean, there is no public access there. It looks to me on the map like the majority of it is wetlands, which we protected in this town 6 ways to Sunday, not by federal ordinance, but by local ordinance, which conforms to federal ordinance. So now work with me for a minute. I'm the landowner, right? And I have a conservation heart, right? What just prevents me, if I'm the landowner, from saying, I'm not going to sell my property without a conservation easement on it? So for example, years ago, I used to work for the Society for Preservation of New England Antiquities. I lived at the Jonathan Sayward House for a while. And the way that we kept that show running was we did sell properties with conservation easements, in essence. But it strikes me that given there's no public access, given that there's wetland protection already, and given that that there is nothing that prevents the owner from selling his property any way he wants. By the way, did he approach us or did we approach him in this?
This has been a long-standing conversation. So to be honest, I don't know how it initially started. It started many, many years ago. That's very typical for these types of processes. The landowner either reaches out and says, you know, tell me a little more, and then they go away. They think about this for many years, and they come back. But we also do have a process of reaching out to landowners.
Okay.
But I know this one goes back well before my time.
All right. Well, I asked somebody from the proponents wrote a very nice letter saying they're in support of this. I won't mention her name because I don't think she expected me to read her email. Now you know she's a woman. But I asked, so what would happen if nothing happened? In other words, the landowner just said, we want to sell this. So I want to read her response and ask you, it's short, and ask you to respond to it. She said, well, there's no guarantee this parcel would be protected. I imagine that a future landowner would be free to use or develop the property as they choose. They could ignore prudent land loads, clear vegetation that supports wildlife habitat or water filtration. They could reroute natural water flow. By the way, all of those things strike me as currently illegal. They could challenge existing zoning regulations, slow or fast erosion of ecological tendency, and so forth. Do you think that's a realistic forward-looking vision of what would happen if we didn't protect this land?
Well, and I don't know if Scott wants to come up. He actually had some comments that he couldn't fit into his time about potential development on the property. So there is upland. There is the potential. Most likely it would be a conservation subdivision. And if you follow the current rules, that could be about 13 units on what is the conservation easement or what could be the conservation easement.
So this would slow growth.
So, I mean, there is definite development potential.
Sure.
You know, wetlands, we like to think that wetlands are protected from development, but that's not really true. Wetlands can be developed if you go through the permitting process. There are many examples of that in Scarborough. There is a state in lieu fee program that you can pay into, you know, for those wetland impacts. And there's other ways of doing that mitigation for wetlands too. So development can happen in wetlands. And so we are looking to make sure that there is these permanent protections in place on this property.
So
Hold on, I'm going to interrupt you just for a second, Counselor Cushing, because what's ending up happening is I'm feeling really isolated. This is supposed to be council discussion among us.
would you allow me one more question?
And-
then I'll.
I will allow one more question, but then I will also remind the council that this is first reading and that if there are additional questions, and I'm not saying you're not asking great questions, I'm just not sure that the format is necessarily what I am comfortable with.
I got it. And it's what is most important. I'll be very quick.
Thank you, sir.
The reason for my questions and for delay of game here is that the 40% of Scarborough voted against the land bank. they are public funds. You'll be coming back and asking for more money. And so when you look at things that to somebody who's not paying careful attention, don't quite make sense on their face, okay, then your credibility comes into play. And not for the people here, the informed people, but the people in general. And so my question really goes to how prudent this is. Thank you. I'll be quiet.
Thank
Do I
you.
get to respond to that or?
If you choose, Mr. Mackey.
Well, I will say
Don't
that
feel
we
obligated.
think this is a very good project. We think it's meets the comprehensive plan, the 30 by 30 goal, and the town open space plan. So as far as the land trust is concerned, we're doing exactly what the town is hoping to do by protecting this parcel. You know, I mean, I can't speak for everyone in town, and there's always going to be people that don't like what we do. But we apply very strict procedures and rules that we follow that are set by the state of Maine, by the federal government, and by our national standards and practices. And so we're very comfortable in this project and all the value it has.
Thank you, Mr. Mackey. Other council discussion, and again, I have set a precedent now where we've asked people to come back to the podium. At this point in the conversation, I'm going to ask that we keep it to just council. Councilor Fellows, please. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, I don't think there's any bait and switch here. I mean, the public benefit criteria were very clearly laid out. They were in the ballot question. That does not require public access, as was stated. I think the group's done a good job of vetting this. I think there's extra value to having this contiguous land, as one of the commenters pointed out. And I think it's pretty powerful when you look at those game camera images and you see a bobcat and a black bear. That type of wildlife needs contiguous land, ideally. And then there also are, all the way down the chain is just as important. So I think this checks the boxes. I know this is only first reading, but I'm on board so far. And I do also want to go on record. I asked the question about the federal grant. As far as I'm concerned, that's gravy if that comes through and we get reimbursed. I think it's important for the town, that the way that a town budgets and spends its money is an expression of its values. And I think this is an important one, and I don't think we need to be dependent on the federal government for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Donovan, are you all set?
Yeah, it's funny, the thing that struck me was that last week, 4 Deer had a party in my backyard. And it was great. I filmed it and it did make my day. It was the natural beauty of wildlife, which I have the pleasure of being able to look out and see every day. And so preserving places like this is important. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, sir. Other councilor comment? Councilor Shu.
Yes, I just want to thank the Parks and Conservation Land Board for the discussion and the support of this. And I think the Scarborough Land Trust did a great job with their application. And I think the pictures are very moving to me. I think the water quality and the pictures and the ideas of, to me, that really speaks to what our purpose is and why we're doing this and why we maybe don't want public access on certain lands. I think it's great that we have an open space plan that has already targeted this as a focus area. We have the Scarborough Land Trust that already has land abutting it. So, they are our partner in this 30 by 30 goal. And so we have a landowner who is looking to sell. So I think this is a great scenario. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the part of this that resonates the most with me, because initially when a resident reaches out to us and suggests that if it does not have public access, that maybe it's not an appropriate use of this type of expense. And, that resonated with me on its face. And after thinking about it some more and speaking with some other people, the argument is on the other side is equally as compelling that, not everything should or can have public access. And that doesn't devalue it in terms of its conservation requirements or value that it has. And to your point, Corey, our values as a community. And so I certainly support this request. And to your point also, Counselor Fellows, the federal funding would be amazing. But I am in support of this project, even if that grant funding does not come through. With that, I will call the vote. Counselor Doherty,
Yes.
Counselor Cushing,
Surprise, yes.
Counselor Shu,
Yes.
Counselor Fellows,
Yes.
Counselor Donovan,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson. He's a yes. And Counselor Seiler is a yes. That is unanimous. Thank you. Order number 25-038. Act on the request to formally accept the resignation of Counselor Donald W. Cushing Jr., which will take effect on Thursday, May 8th, 2025, and set the date for nomination papers to be available for this seat on the town council with the term to expire November of 2026, from Thursday, April 3rd, 2025 to Monday, April 14th, 2025, and set the special municipal election for Tuesday, June 10th, 2025, to coincide with the school budget validation referendum and the Board of Education election. This is coming to us from the clerk, but Tom is prepared to tee this up.
I really think that, I believe the title you just read really encapsulates every single part of this. With the resignation provided to council, it's your duty to consider accepting that. And in doing so, declaring a vacancy of the seat. This order goes on to lay out the process for nomination papers. And the timing is fortuitous in that it appears as though we're able to fill this vacant seat at the June election. So there'll be very limited impact to the council and its conduction of business.
Is there anyone wishing to make public comment on this item?
Nina McKee, I'm kind of a broken record up here, but I just want to say thank you, Don. You've done a wonderful job, and it will be sad to see you go. So thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you, Nina. Anyone else? With that, I will close public comment. Do I have a motion? Council discussion? We can all speak. You may
I
speak.
would love to vote no on this. But I am for individuals having what they want when they want it. So reluctantly, I'll vote to do this because this is what Don wants, I guess. But he will be greatly missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Counselor Cushing?
Yeah, I would say to the people of Scarborough, not to my colleagues here, that you probably get that I take a contrarian point of view, that I try to bring out the opposite point on the question. But people of Scarborough, you haven't picked up the phone and called me. Those contrarian point of views don't show here in this dais. We don't see you there at the public comment. And so what we have is we have a large body of very like-minded people coming before us who generally appear here with a consensus on issues. If I had any indication that the people of Scarborough were standing up and doing their part, I would continue to do this my part. But to spend most of my time here in what ultimately would relate to more of an advisory capacity, no, thank you. My message to the people of Scarborough is that you're going to need to start getting engaged. And I'm sorry that I was not able to accomplish that because candidly, I enjoy this, but I'm not doing it by myself. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Counselor Cushing. With that, I will call the vote. Counselor Doherty?
Yes.
Counselor Cushing?
Yes.
Counselor Shu?
Yes.
Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
Counselor Donovan? Counselor Anderson? And Counselor Seiler is a yes. Thank you. Item 9 is non-action items. And item 11 is council member comments. Is there counselors wishing to make comment? I have one this evening. If Liam could go ahead and pull this up, I'll be super brief. But my boys took the opportunity to go to the State House to participate in the honorary page program on Tuesday. And they thoroughly enjoyed their visit to the state capitol. They got to bang the gavel and deliver notes. And it was really that's Hugh. That's my 10-year-old. And then the other one is Ben. That's my 12-year-old. They had a great time. The members of the House were incredibly welcoming. And I just wanted to share that was such a wonderful opportunity. If you have a young person who's interested in learning more, they invite people grades 3 through 8 to participate in the PAGE program. And my boys both gave it 5 stars. So any other counselor comments this evening? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn? All those in favor, Counselor Doherty, Counselor Cushing, Counselor Shoup,
Yes.
Counselor Fellows, Counselor Donovan, Counselor Anderson, and Counselor Seidler is a yes. Thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy your evening.